Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Hoopsville Sectional Preview. I'm your host, Dave McHugh, Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. If you've got questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville at D3Hoops.com. Join us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Hoopsville. Of course, we're also on Instagram at D3Hoopsville as well. Getting used to that social medium as well, if you want to join us there, though we don't answer questions via Instagram. It's a little bit more difficult, but we certainly keep things more interesting on the other social medias. But at least on Instagram, you can find out where we're traveling, for example. We'll take pictures of where we're headed and so on and so forth. So that's how it works, and we hope you'll take advantage of it, to say the least. If you got questions, again, for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville and hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville at D3Hoops.com, etc. We certainly will look forward to hearing from you. Lots of guests to talk about tonight. We meant to get one more in. This is how fried my brain is. Believe it or not, I knew it was going to be a jam show, and I actually tried to make an effort to get seven guests into the show tonight. Couldn't figure out for the last 24 hours why I didn't see, I felt like I was missing one. I didn't do any counting because I wasn't based on a number 7. I had just looked at 7. And then about an hour, maybe an hour and a half ago, I realized the one I had missed. So hopefully they keep playing and keep winning, and I can jump in on that side. But here's who we have coming up on the show tonight. In men's basketball, we'll talk to the Cinderella, Keene State. Ryan Kane will join us from their Owls men's basketball program, who defeated Stockton, still getting used to not saying Richard Stockton, but Stockton in the opening round in overtime thanks to a crazy sequence with a late foul. Then we'll switch directions, go to women's basketball, talk to Rochester women's basketball coach Jim Scheible about the Yellow Jackets and how well they're playing right now, and one of 3 UAA teams still in the dance. Then we'll talk to UT Tyler's head basketball coach, Kendra Hassel, first-year head coach at Tyler, in her first year there, I should say. They are on to a big matchup, number 2 versus number 6 against George Fox. Talk to her about the challenges with that, maybe flying a little under the radar on top of that as well. Then we'll talk to Emory men's basketball coach, Jason Zimmerman. Remember, we talked to him at the Hoopsville Classic. Team certainly lost a lot from Alex Foster and the like from last year's team. They struggled early, no surprise, kind of found their feet at some point, and then woke up during UAA tournament or regular season action and ran off with their 3rd UAA title in 4 years. They are off to the Midwest yet again. At some point, I'm going to have to talk to the committee about whether we can ever get Emory up in the Northeast. The problem is the Great Lakes and Central Western areas tend to have that hole you can slot a team into based on opening in brackets. It's easier to get everybody, fill a pod in the Great Lakes or in the Northeast, East, and Mid-Atlantic areas than sometimes it is in the Central. It's easier to ship Emory there, but we'll talk to him about that trip. They're playing number 1 Augustana. To say they have a tall task would be an understatement. We'll talk to him coming up. Then we'll talk to Amherst men's basketball coach Dave Hixon. Dave, of course, haven't talked to this season. That's a little bit weird. We haven't talked to him in over a year. Last time, early January, if memory serves, and we may have talked to him last year in the postseason. We'll talk to Dave Hixon about his team, what he expects from his squad, maybe a team that is still finding themselves after the wonderful years of 2013 and 14. They on the road, because the women are hosting, have a big battle with Babs and what he expects with Flannery or sans Flannery. Then we'll talk to Wooster men's basketball coach Steve Moore. Wooster, unranked, barely really been a topic of conversation for us for the most part. They've been at the top of the NCAC, which is certainly impressive. We'll talk to Steve Moore about whether the Scots can get it done at Oswego coming up this weekend. So that's all ahead here on Hoopsville. You can join us again on Instagram at D3Hoopsville, on Twitter at D3Hoopsville, of course, using the hashtag Hoopsville. And also join us by emailing us, hoopsville at D3Hoops.com, or on YouTube. We do have a chat room. I'll be flat out honest. It is one of the last priorities on my list to check. So you can go in there and try it if you want, but I can tell you now that most likely we will not be able to necessarily answer any questions in there. But that is your option, should you choose to take it. So sectional weekend, obviously a little bit different after this weekend. So the men's and women's teams will play the double round robin as we normally do, Sweet 16, Elite 8, get a chance to go on to the championships. Of course, for women, they will go on to Capital in about a week's time, play the semifinals on Saturday. No championship, no consolation. Consolation doesn't exist this year. Championship will, but we'll wait 16 days to play it in Indianapolis. On the men's side, it's status quo. We will go on to Salem and play those games in Salem on Friday and Saturday with the NABC All-Star Game. Speaking of the NABC All-Star Game, the final vote took place, and congratulations yet again to a MIAC winner. I think it was 3 of the last 4 years somebody from the MIAC has been in the vote and has gotten in. Let's see. This year we had Jordan Bolger from Concordia Moorhead. The year before is Marcus Alapate from St. Thomas. And who else? Augsburg's Dan Kornbaum in 2014. So that's 3 years in a row that MIAC has gotten an at-large in with the vote. The vote was close. Bolger from Concordia Moorhead got 30% of the vote. Brooklyn's Egjan Giabalgi, I know how to say it, and I haven't said it in a while, so I apologize there for that mistake. He got the most votes at 33%. Kyle Richardson finished with 25% of the vote. Second most votes ever. But interestingly enough, some people like John Christensen, Bryson Fonville, Lucas Hausman, Daniel Purvisis from Wabash, and Paris Scales from Greensboro didn't really register much votes. So disappointing there, but certainly congratulations to the two gentlemen who will be playing in the All-Star game. The All-Star final roster will be announced next week. That is per who makes it to the Final Four and who doesn't. Great articles on our website at d3hoops.com. Article about the Texas Tyler team playing. A Tufts men's basketball. Also, Oswego State's men's basketball team is featured. Albright's women's team is featured, as is St. Thomas men's basketball. Those are much of the hosts. We should remind everybody that the sectional host, about 50% of them make it on to the championship weekend. That's mainly on the men's side. Women's side, I think it's more. A higher number of sectional hosts will make it on to the next weekend, mainly because on the women's side, it's so dominating by those teams that they're so good. The men's side, more parity. Also, men's side is where we tend to see more geographical situations, not necessarily because the women don't create the geography as much as the men, scenarios, but mainly because the women's hosts are so darn good. So we got about a 50% chance. We'll talk about it later in the show maybe, but we'll figure out who we think may get on to Salem and on to Capital. But for example, on the women's side, it's hard to go against Thomas More, who will be hosting. I think it's going to be very hard to potentially go against Amherst because they're hosting. The interesting too on the women's side, and this is where you got 50% comes into play. Scranton's hosting, but it's the Tufts women's team who may be the better team there, potentially. Scranton's certainly playing darn well, and so is Albright. So it's a little bit of a toss-up there, I think. But Tufts is certainly a curveball, and Albright could be a curveball. But Scranton needs to get out of that to make that 50% maybe go above that. And on the other one, St. Thomas is very good, but you do have maybe a misunderstood Texas Tyler team coming in who's very good. You also have, obviously, George Fox coming in undefeated, though I don't think George Fox gets out of this weekend. I wouldn't be surprised if Texas Tyler beats them. Granted, we don't have a lot on Texas Tyler that can tell us if they're good enough to beat George Fox. I just don't think George Fox is like the team of last year that got a runner-up. I don't think they think they're as good as the last year's runner-up team, to be blunt. I think they'll be flat out honest with you. And I think Coach Meeks was recently on this show, that they aren't as good, potentially, as everyone thinks they are, or that undefeated record indicates. It's a great record, but maybe not. The conference wasn't as good as it has been in the past. Circumstances have played themselves out as they are. Anyway, so on the women's side, the St. Thomas and Scranton pods, I think, are the most likely to see someone other than the host come out of there. I just think with the teams in place. Again, Scranton, you've got Tufts and Albright on the other side of that bracket to the Elite Eight. Scranton certainly has a good chance of getting past this next game against CNU, but CNU could also upset Scranton in this next game. So as a result, I think Scranton's got a big challenge coming out of their own place this week. And I think St. Thomas has a big challenge coming out of their own place on the women's side. And again, it could, it's going to be a bigger hill to climb, I think, than people realize. On the men's side of things, it's definitely more up in the air. Listen, Oswego's hosting mainly because of geography, okay? So Oswego wouldn't necessarily be a favorite right now. I think Christopher Newport is an overwhelming favorite out of that pod. Worcester is certainly playing well as well, but, Christopher Newport's number 4 in the country. Maybe floated up there a little bit, but they were also pretty darn good with only 1 loss. I feel bad a little bit for Keene State, who we'll talk to in a matter of minutes. So, you've got them. Then you've also got Tufts men's basketball hosting, but Amherst is the higher regionally ranked team there. Babson, if Flannery's playing well, is darn good. And Johnson and Wales could easily come out of that 4. I think it lines up well for Johnson and Wales. It also could be argued it lines up well for Tufts. It could be argued it lines up well for Babson if Flannery's there. And you could argue it lines up well for Amherst, depending on how you look at that pod and how you want to break it down. So I think that pod's up in the air. I think Oswego's pod is up in the air. The home team, not necessarily the favorites in those 2 pods to come out of there. So that's already 2 of the 4. Augustana, I think the favorites to come out of that pod, but that's a heck of a pod. They're taking on Emory in the first game, and then either St. Thomas or Whitman in the second game. So Augustana to get back and get out of Rock Island's got a tall task, though I think they've got a good chance. And then Benedictine's got to go against Ohio Wesleyan, and then it's either Alma or St. Norbert. Conceivably, all 4 pods could be non-hosts coming out very easily. Could happen. So, again, about 50%, especially on the men's side. Women's side, it's a higher number of the hosts of this weekend get on to the championship weekend. I don't think we see that this year. I don't think we see that high a number. With that in mind, we're going to get a break. We got to go and get Ryan Kane from Keene State on the show. But again, a reminder, if you got questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville and hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville@d3hoops.com. Join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Hoopsville. Again, a reminder, Keene State's Ryan Kane coming up, then Rochester's Jim Scheible on the women's side. UT Tyler's Kendra Hassel, also from the women's team, will join us. Then Emory men's basketball coach Jason Zimmerman, Amherst men's basketball coach Dave Hixon, and Wooster's men's basketball coach Steve Moore, all coming up here on the show. And again, if you've got questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville and hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville@d3hoops.com. Join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Hoopsville. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk Keene State men's basketball, the Owls, the Cinderellas right now. You're listening to Hoopsville. Back with more right after this.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and I know how powerful words can be. The term gay doesn't mean stupid, lame, or less than.
So I pledge to speak up if I hear the term gay used in a derogatory way or any other homophobic terms.
If you can play in Division III.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and my teammates unconditionally accepted me as part of their family. So now I pledge to do the same for others. If you can play in Division III.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor's Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
With every basket and every stop, the skill of elite student athletes will be on display. The sights, the sounds, the intensity of an NCAA championship. It all comes down to this moment, and the winner takes it all. Be there to share the experience with your family and friends. The 2016 NCAA Division III Men's Basketball Championship, March 18th and 19th at Salem Civic Center in Salem, Virginia. Visit ncaa.com/tickets to score your championship seats today.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at d3hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and I know how powerful words can be.
Sorry about that. We're back on the air. Some glitches still with our commercial system. We'll figure it out. If you got any questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoops or hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, Hoopsville at D3Hoops.com. And join us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Hoopsville. You are listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. Time to get to our guests. We don't have a lot of time tonight because we're going to try and bang through a lot of guests. So we'll start with the Cinderella, though. That's perfectly the spot to start with, I would think. Talk to a team that is certainly came out surprisingly out of a bracket, though one that was certainly a little bit more wide open than some of the other ones were. Took advantage of a mistake by their opponent and then took advantage of a tired opponent in the second round, most likely. That's certainly how maybe the story of Keene State. They got in from a Little East at large. I shouldn't say at large. They got in with a Little East automatic qualifier by winning the conference tournament and have taken full advantage of that. Joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline, presented by the City of Salem, it is Ryan Kane, head coach for Keene State. Ryan, how you doing, sir?
I'm great, Dave. How are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty well. First and foremost, obviously it's about sometimes how you finish a season. You guys are certainly finishing it pretty darn well. Coming out of the middle of the LEC pack to win the conference tournament and get into the tournament and now taking full advantage of that.
Yeah, it's been one heck of a ride here. You know, we've suffered a lot of injuries throughout our season, and fortunately for us, we've gotten healthy at the right time, and I think that's been a big factor in us playing our best basketball this season so far.
And you have an interesting season. You started the year winning 6 in a row: Green Mountain, Endicott, LaSalle, New England, Springfield, and Mass Dartmouth. Then you guys kind of hit a little bit of a tailspin. Lost 3 in a row, including Stevens Point and Loris while on a trip to Arizona. Then you lost 3 out of 4 in January. Then you lost 4 out of 6 as January crossed into February. And now you're back on the roll again, having won the last, 7 in a row to get to this point in the tournament. It's got to be both a joy and basically hair-pulling experience this season.
You know, yeah, I think the coaches have gotten a little bit more worked up than the players at points. You know, these guys have maintained a pretty high level of confidence despite some of those struggles in the middle of our season. You know, I think they realized that there was a chance that we'd get some guys back from these injuries. And we played a lot of close games, you know, specifically in conference. I think we lost our 6 conference games by a total of 24 points. So a lot of close games, and I think those close games at this point have obviously helped us pull out some of these tight ones that we played in the NCAA tournament. You know, we were down 4 with under a minute left in our first round game, and our guys didn't blink an eye. We maintained our confidence. So although at points I was ready to rip my hair out, I think my hair was getting closer and closer to resembling Chris Bartley's over at WPI. I think it's been a good thing in the long run here for us because I think it's given us the experience that we need to be successful in these close ones in the tournament so far.
Well, you got picked up late, too. I mean, you got named interim of this program in August, coming over from WPI when they made a change, when a change took place at Keene. So you kind of picked up the reins a little bit late on this one. The guys kind of got to know you a little bit late. Trevor Woodruff at Scranton Women talked about that experience as well. Tell us just about the whirlwind that was the start of your season.
Yeah, it was crazy. It all developed pretty quickly. I went from being on my honeymoon in June to applying for the job and interviewing for the job, and then accepting the job early in August. You know, so obviously the biggest thing was transitioning with the current players. You know, they were coming off a conference tournament championship and had to deal with the turnover at head coach. So that was a difficult adjustment for those guys. So first and foremost, we tried to build a relationship with the players. And I think that went pretty smoothly, pretty quickly. So we were lucky there. Just a very close group of guys that, like I said, believed in themselves and knew they had a pretty good thing going. But it happened fast. Obviously, you got to pick up on the recruiting trail because we were behind there. So it's trying to balance all those things at once while trying to move our team into a positive direction and hopefully take a jump. They were in the NCAAs last year and lost in the first round. So fortunately, at this point, I think that experience helped them, and we were able to play off some of the experience of the players and transition pretty easily despite the late start to our season.
If no one knows, obviously you had a heck of a playing career at WPI and played under Coach Bartley, and then you ended up coaching under Coach Bartley. when the call comes or you see that the job is opened up, is that a tough decision? You talk about being on your honeymoon, but is that a tough decision to make the pull when you've been a WPI guy for so long, and this one's clearly going to be a late start to everything? You're behind the 8 ball no matter how you look at it when you start this job.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely was in a great situation over at WPI. I had the opportunity to play for Coach Bartley and play with a lot of great guys over there. He's one of my best friends out there. So it wasn't, not necessarily the easiest thing in the world to leave him because we have such a close relationship, and I know I wouldn't be able to be around him and those guys on a daily basis. But when you have an opportunity to go to a program like Keene State, who has some pretty rich tradition, they've been to the Elite 8, Sweet 16 in the early to mid-2000s, obviously coming off a conference tournament championship. So to get an opportunity to be a head coach at a school like that was definitely something I didn't think I could pass up. Obviously, Coach Bartley supported me through the entire process. And just fortunate to have such a great group of guys for my first head coaching position. I just feel lucky that I was able to get this job and be the head coach for these guys.
Quickly, before we leave the WPI topic, you publicly thanked just about everybody there for their help. Thanking Rusty Egan, it might have gone too far. Come on. Rusty's a good friend of the show, but we don't need to be giving him more attention.
He came in to WPI about halfway through my career, and obviously, ended up winning that Jostens Award. So I think there were a lot of people that had a hand in that. So I figured I'd give him a little shout out for all his help when it came to that stuff.
Yeah, good call. Good call. Let's talk about your team. You talked about dealing with injuries and dealing with guys, losing guys on the team. Obviously, Dizell Wright, his 15 points a game. Lost that early, 6.5 rebounds. He only played 7 games, but other guys have stepped up. You actually have, I'm going to argue, technically 5 guys in double figures. Nate Stitchell at 15 points a game. Matt Ozella, nearly 13 points a game. Tyler Nichols at 12.5, 10 points for Nate Howard. And Lucas Hamill is just a shade under 10 points a game. They all contribute in some capacity or another outside of scoring. Ozella is leading the team in rebound, or I should say second on the team in rebounding. Nate Howard's actually the leader in rebounding at nearly 10 rebounds a game. Stitchell and Ozella both hand out quite a few assists along with Nichols. You're getting a lot of steals and blocks, etc. Very much feels like a team when you look at the stat sheet.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely been our motto. I think we're hard to guard because we share it so well. We do have a lot of talent and guys can make plays. But there's no doubt that our team puts the individual agenda behind the team's success. So we feel like the ball moves pretty well on offense, and that makes us a difficult cover on that end of the floor. And then we feel the same thing defensively. We get each other's back. We feel like we compete at a very high level. We have some very talented guards on the defensive end of the floor, and then we have the big 7-footer protecting the rim. So the stats get shared pretty nicely throughout everybody on the squad. At first, starting the year, before the injuries and some of the turnover on our roster, we felt like we almost had too many good players where there's going to be guys on the bench. And, one of the concerns we had was just the general attitude of guys not necessarily getting the minutes that they were hoping for because we did have so much talent.
Yeah.
Fortunately for some guys and unfortunately for others, we did have some injuries and other stuff that came into play and had some turnover on our roster. So it gave other guys opportunity. With all the injuries, we even have guys who maybe didn't think they were going to play at points, playing very pivotal roles, first guy off the bench, that kind of thing. So a lot of guys have stepped up, and I think, throughout the season, the fact that we were such a true team, it helped us at this point because, we've had foul trouble in both of these games. We're pulling, the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th guy off the bench, and it seems like there's really no adjustment when those guys come into the game. So definitely a true team in that sense.
When you look at this season, you went through a stretch there where you lost to Eastern Connecticut, you lost to Middlebury, you lost to Plymouth State and Western Connecticut in a span of 6 games. You then came back, and that seemed to be the turning point. You then beat Eastern Connecticut, and it wasn't close, 26 points. You beat Rhode Island College, you beat Plymouth State, then you get into the conference tournament, and you beat Rhode Island College, you beat Mass Dartmouth, who had already pulled the upset. What was the turning point there? Because even then, you move into the NCAA tournament, you get the win over Stockton, and then you get the win over Middlebury again to exact some revenge. What's the difference between that first 6 and the recent 7?
Yeah, I mean, really, to me, it's health. Our point guard, Lucas Hamill, he's unlike a lot of guys out there just in terms of the effort and approach on the basketball court. He plays the game at a very high level, and we had some guys on our roster that were playing at that level. But once you add him in the mix, another heart and soul guy for us, I really feel like it kind of took our team to another level. He's just so competitive, and he's very inspirational for a lot of other guys in the court. He has a different dimension when it comes to our defensive backcourt. Obviously, he pushes the tempo for us as our point guard. And once you have a couple really good guards that can, stick some guys on the perimeter, some talented wings, and complement that with our 7-footer, it really kind of put our team back into the place that we thought we may have it. And then it kind of slid our rotation into a much better spot as well. So, transitioning some guys to, first guy off the bench and having that be a more comfortable role for them. So I think that was the biggest difference, is health and getting our rotation back into place the way we kind of thought it would be to start our season.
How crazy was the game against Stockton, just in the way it finished? Stockton player fouling you guys in a tie ball game.
Yeah, it was a wild game. The end of regulation was wild. We had a layup at the end of regulation to win it that didn't go down, and that was after they fought back. And, so it was a wild finish at the end of regulation. Then we go up to start OT. Sometimes they have the momentum after coming back from a deficit in overtime, and we did a good job of getting the lead early. All of a sudden they go up 4, we fight back. So it was a back-and-forth ball game. So we were fortunate to tie the game up, and we got a nice defensive stop. And we thought we were going to have some type of shot to try to win it, but not necessarily a couple free throws. It was just a simple time and score situation. And, you feel bad for anybody that loses on that note. That's not how you want it to go. But obviously we'll take the win with that being said.
Yeah, of course, especially in the NCAA tournament.
Exactly.
You got number 4 Christopher Newport ahead of you, and you're playing them at Oswego, and obviously you're already there on the western side of New York State. What do you expect from CNU? What do you think? What have you seen so far on tape that you're thinking about?
Yeah, they're definitely one of the best teams we played all season long. Obviously they have a terrific record, having only lost one game. We saw one of the teams in their conference in the first round in our pod,
right?
In the regional. Yep, Salisbury. So we were able to watch them against Salisbury a couple times. And Christopher Newport is just extremely talented. They have terrific wing players, and they complement each other very nicely. Stud athlete in Carter. McFarland's a guy who can just absolutely knock it down. They complement those two really good wings with more shooters and some guys that can make plays at the guard spot. And they run their offense through a very versatile center that actually comes off the bench. They do things a little bit different and bring some really good guys off the bench. It could be a little bit confusing for some teams. And they run really good stuff on offense. They're extremely competitive on defense. They play with a high spirit. Solid pack man-to-man. They do a really good job on both ends of the floor. They run some really good stuff. It's going to be a great test for our guys. I think we're excited to compete at a high level against them tomorrow.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to seeing the game online, and wish you all the luck. I assume the campus has been a buzz.
Yeah, the support that we have at Keene State College is pretty neat. The community is amazing. The school itself, between faculty, staff, and students, have just been so supportive. We couldn't thank them enough for all their support for everything they've been doing. The games are streamed at the local bars in town, and we're getting Snapchats after games with people celebrating, and lots of messages and phone calls. So it's been an awesome run and very supportive from the school and community.
When are they taking that interim tag off, Ryan?
I actually just applied for the permanent position this past week, so
Good.
Hopefully that goes well.
I think you've got a bit of a leg up on it, but congratulations nonetheless. Well, good luck this weekend. Obviously, we'll keep an eye on the Owls, see how that all plays out. As always, give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those tuning in?
No, thanks for having me, Dave, and thanks everybody listening for your support this season. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ryan. Take care of yourself, and like I said, good luck.
Thanks, Dave. Take care.
You too. Ryan Kane joining us from Keene State. He mentioned former Jostens winner. I want to congratulate the 2 Jostens winners from Nebraska Wesleyan and from MSOE. We'll have more thoughts on the Jostens coming up later in the show, but congratulations to Ryan. He has parlayed all of that experience into a coaching job, gotten Keene State to the second weekend for the first time since 2007. Congratulations to the Owls, and good luck against Christopher Newport in Oswego. Going to take a break. When we come back, switch gears, talk women's basketball, talk to a New York State team in Massachusetts. Rochester will join us on the Hoopsville hotline. Then we'll go down to Texas, playing up in Minnesota. Texas Tyler will talk to us as well. You listen to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com. From the WBCA NABC studios, more Hoopsville when we come back.
For the love of the game. But for those of us who are Division III student athletes, it's more than that. A lot more.
Sure, the game is important. But as we work so hard to build both mind and body, it's more about team.
That is why NCAA Division III teamed up with Special Olympics. And in giving the gift of sport to those for whom it seemed an impossible dream, we are working to make this a better world.
Help us keep that dream alive.
You can make a difference.
Division III schools offer academic scholarships instead of athletic scholarships. This really puts the focus that the student athlete needs to maintain that GPA.
I did receive a non-athletic scholarship upon entering school.
I got the presidential scholarship, which was huge for me.
I think there's more opportunities for academic scholarships in Division III. A lot of people pick schools just based on the sport and don't get that experience.
Being a Division III athlete and developing my leadership skills has definitely put my name out there and helped me get more recognition on campus, but more recognition nationwide. I did win the Jostens Trophy, which is based on leadership, academics, and then how well you do on the court.
I'm also the Schwartz Scholar of my class. Schwartz Scholarship is basically a scholarship that is given to a student who's identified as a likely leader.
And the end of the day, it won't matter how they play on the field, it will matter how they do in the classroom.
Welcome back to Hoopsville. This is Danielle Donahue, Executive Director of the WBCA. And we are a proud partner and very excited about all the future broadcasts. Here's Dave.
Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody, as we get ready for the sectional weekend. I'm your host, Dave McHugh. Hoopsville presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. We appreciate you taking the time to join us here on the show as we talk to a number of the teams getting ready to play this weekend for a chance to go on to the championship weekends. Of course, in women's basketball, that is capital to determine who the two teams will be to move on to Indianapolis for the championship. And in men, it's once again a trip to Salem for the 20th year in a row. This time a chance to hand out the 19th men's championship trophy. So that's what's at stake this weekend, as we all know. And obviously with 32 teams in both men and women getting ready to try and be the final 8, there's a lot to talk about. If you got questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville and hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville@d3hoops.com. Join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Hoopsville. UAA has 3 teams left in the tournament, as we have mentioned. WashU and Carnegie Mellon will eliminate at least one of them as they face off with each other. But if you look in the lower left-hand part of the bracket, one of the more dangerous teams probably kind of lurking a little bit would be Rochester. They're not hosting, but they're somewhat nearby, I guess, if you go from central New York to central Massachusetts, roughly. But the women's basketball team certainly playing pretty darn well. And their head coach, Jim Scheible, joins us on the Hoopsville Hotline presented by the City of Salem. Jim, welcome to Hoopsville again, sir.
Thanks, Dave. Great to be here.
Appreciate you taking the time. First and foremost, you and I saw each other back at the 50th and final Wendy's Classic back at the beginning of December. And it was weird because you guys were playing in an early game on the final day because you had stumbled in the very first round of the tournament, and I remember thinking to myself, wow, this is a really good team playing in this part of the bracket, and clearly you guys were better than what that first game of that tournament had kind of indicated. Of course, Geneseo had beaten you, and interestingly enough, Geneseo went on to the championship game as well. How much has this team changed since I saw them in the beginning of December?
Well, we've grown up quite a bit, having to go through a UAA schedule, and I also think we played probably one of the toughest schedules we have played since I've been here. But I'm going to give credit to Geneseo in that semifinal game that we lost to them in the Wendy's tournament. I thought they just were better. We knew they were kind of physical with us. We had to get better in that area. And I thought we've really kind of grown up, especially we have to. I mean, when you go up against WashU's, Carnegie's, NYU's, and you can go down through the list of the UAA because I think they're all strong. But we also challenged ourselves with Montclair, with Ohio Northern, with Ithaca at Ithaca. So there are numerous other teams that, we were hoping would prepare us for later in the year.
Certainly, yeah, Geneseo was a pretty darn good team, as they proved the rest of the season, despite the challenges that they faced. You went through a stretch, early on, that was your only loss. You went until January 29th until you suffered your second loss of the season, and that kind of opened you guys up. You went 4 for 4 in the next 8. With losses to WashU, Chicago, Brandeis, and Carnegie Mellon. Interestingly enough, you didn't repeat a loss in the UAA. You exacted revenge against WashU, or they were exacting revenge against you or Chicago. Actually, the WashU-Chicago weekend was back-to-back, so you literally exacted revenge the next weekend. How important was that you didn't get even swept in the conference? You were able to stay on top of this conference and beat some really darn good teams, especially in the second half of conference play.
Yeah, I thought that was crucial for us to make a statement, and we got swept in the Midwest. WashU handled us pretty easily, and then Chicago beat us in a 2-point game there. And then, to be honest, coming back, that back-to-back weekends with WashU and Chicago, that's a pretty tough one.
Yeah.
But we had WashU the next Friday night after we lost to Chicago, and I thought they played really well, and we were hanging around in that game by our fingernails for a while. Down 11 going into the fourth quarter, and then we just made some plays. I mean, our young kids, just kind of rose and made some nice plays. Luckily, WashU missed some shots they might have otherwise made, but I thought that was a big turning point for us when we came back from 11 down in the fourth against WashU. We kind of realized we hung together and we just kept being resilient that good results could come. And then I thought then to beat Chicago was a good capper for the weekend because that team they're just getting better as the year went on. They finished the year really strongly, so we were happy to get out of there with that sweep that weekend.
The conference had 4 teams make the tournament, 3 of them still alive, and as we mentioned in the preview, and we've mentioned all show long, obviously WashU and Carnegie Mellon will eliminate one of each other from the tournament, and obviously if you guys win, that'll make 2 into the Elite 8 round. UAA's always been tough. It seems, and it's always been somewhat deep. It seems deeper now. It seems more competitive now.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the team that finished last in the conference, Case Western. I think you go look at their statistics for who they played over the year. They played like 12 ranked teams, and they knocked off 2 of them, but they took us to overtime in Cleveland. So we knew going into that weekend, the Case Carnegie weekend, that we had 2 battles on our hands. Luckily we escaped at Case, but then we just ran into a buzzsaw offensively at Carnegie. I thought we played really well offensively against them, but I don't think I've seen a team that offensively potent in a while. We just had a really hard time slowing them down. They hung 95 on us. So
yeah, I saw that.
I'm really happy to see 3 UAA teams get through to the Sweet 16, but my hat's off to Carnegie. I think they had the toughest road of the 3 of us so far, having to beat Hope at Hope and Ohio Northern at Hope. I mean, we played Ohio Northern. We know how good they are. But to beat Hope at Hope, I mean, that's kind of a statement right there.
Well, look at what you've been able to do. Obviously, a win over Emory to close the season, having lost that Carnegie Mellon game, as you gave up 95, which is not exactly what you guys are known for defensively. You only give up about 68 points a game. But you beat Johnson & Wales and you beat Stockton. Both games got to be played at the Palestra. How important was it to be at your place to start this tournament and get your feet underneath you?
I think it was helpful, definitely, because we're kind of trying to reemerge on the national scene. We've been down a little bit the last couple of years, but we've been young. Last year we were young. We had a big freshman class, and they're really starting to develop. So to get in the NCAA tournament and then to get a couple of games on your home where you're a little more comfortable, I thought that was definitely helpful. We played probably as well as we could have played against Johnson & Wales. I mean, we did not approach them lightly because we knew on a given night that they could be very dangerous. But we played really well against them. And then against Stockton, it was more of a grind-out game for both sides. Luckily, we got a little bit of a cushion in the fourth quarter and just held on.
You'll take on Bowdoin in the next round, games at Amherst. Bowdoin falling out of the top 25 right before the tournament began. About equal distance between, I think it's right in the middle for both of you guys, distance-wise travel, maybe a little further for Bowdoin. Obviously, you're in enemy territory in the sense that you're at Amherst, but what do you expect from this Bowdoin team that you're trying to prepare for?
Well, I think, they're really well coached. They're a heck of a defensive team. They've got some real nice weapons offensively. They check off a lot of the boxes, and it's going to be hard for us to do some of the things, we want to do. But, at this level, they're all good teams. We know Bowdoin's going to be very good. I think we both come from 2 of the strongest conferences in the nation. We both have had our share of success in those conferences, but I look at this as kind of a 50-50 game. Whoever plays better on that night makes more shots. Because I think we're both going to defend, we're both going to rebound, and we have a lot of respect for them, and we know it's going to be a battle.
Obviously, on the other side of that, it's either going to be Amherst or Stevens, and Certainly teams you're familiar with, Amherst again in the NESCAC, and Stevens being in your own region, in the East region, certainly not unfamiliar squads. Obviously hosted and were home in your own beds last weekend. Now you're on the road to a team in Massachusetts, and you're in a hotel and traveling on buses. Is it that big a difference? I mean, traveling by bus for you guys in the UAA, that's kind of a new thing.
Well, we fly to several of the cities,
Right.
but we also bus to a couple cities. We're kind of one of those schools in the UAA that's kind of, not too far. It's very busable for some of our trips, so we do bus a couple.
Okay.
But this is our spring break, Dave. I mean, we're celebrating. There's no one on campus, so, usually we wouldn't have left as early. But we came up on Wednesday night for the Friday game just because otherwise we'd just be hanging around Rochester and there'd be no one there. So this is kind of our way of getting out and really enjoying our spring break.
Well, I was going to say, if there's nobody there in Rochester, you might as well just get to the site because there's no one there either. And now at least it feels more like a business trip.
Yeah, we kind of broke up the week. If you're going to be nowhere, let's be nowhere different. So
That's a fair point. When you look at the squad, you talk about its youth. I want to circle back to that. And, you've got 4 seniors on it, but if you look at the starting or the top point getters, for lack of a better description, of the top 5 or 6, only one senior really kind of pops out. The rest are really sophomores. This is a team that, while it's got some seniors, kind of like a lot of teams in Division III this year, are building from kind of the bottom and building from a younger underclassmen and building towards not only this season and having success with that, but clearly laying a great foundation for the years ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think our team's pretty well balanced. The one thing that I will acknowledge, our seniors have been great leaders this year. Tyler Guerreri, Kelsey Hurley, Kayla Kibling, and Emily Lewis. They may not be leading us statistically, but they're incredibly important to what we're doing. So those are going to be, big pieces that we're going to have to replace next year. But our scoring, a lot of it is coming from our sophomore class. We've got key guard play from our junior class, and overall our depth is our sophomores and freshmen right now. So, we do have hopes going forward that we're going to be, up doing pretty well for a while, but I do think this senior class will definitely be hard to replace for us.
You have 11-year players you have played in 21 or more games of your 27 this season, but in the NCAA tournament, coaches tend to shorten the bench just a little bit. How much of your depth is not necessarily affected but has been shifted in the NCAA tournament, especially with media timeouts allowing you some extra breaks? How much have you shortened that bench versus the 11 who traditionally get in to most of your games?
Against Johnson and Wales, we kept the rotation pretty deep because it seemed like all our kids were flying that night. We just wanted to go out and apply as much pressure as possible. Against Stockton, more of a grind-out game, a little slower. We did shorten the rotation a little bit. I think we played 7 or 8 consistently in that game. But I do think, for us to be at our best, we need to get to like 9 players, 10 players potentially playing because the pace we'd like to play is pretty quick. And to do that, I think you do need depth. But you're right. The game is a little different in the NCAAs with the media timeouts. So, we're going to have to kind of see how the game goes against Bowdoin. If it's a fast game, we'll probably use some depth. If it's, a grinded-out, slower game, we may shorten it as well.
Speaking of those media timeouts, and speaking of speed, before we let you go, the kind of curiosity there, if you want to go up-tempo, you've got 4 extra breaks built in now that kind of stop things midway through the periods. Granted, not as intrusive as the men's and the old women's rules were, but how much does that keep you from being able to go up pace like you want to?
It does. It just forces you to start and stop a lot more in the course of a game. But, you can play break to break and try and get us going in as fast as you can during those times. But, the teams at this level, the pressure doesn't affect them as much. Defensive pressure, they handle it. So it may be one of those games where you play possession to possession, and you really have to value them. And I know Bowdoin can do that. They played an incredibly tough schedule. They're not going to be scared of anything. They're going to be ready to play. So it's just going to be 2 very good teams going at it.
Well, Coach, I appreciate you taking the time. Don't want to take too much more of your time. I know you want more film to look over. I know you want to get the team focused a little bit more on the game at hand for Friday night, so we'll let you go. But I appreciate you taking the time to join us. As always, we give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those who may be tuning in?
Well, I will say, we're just enjoying the ride here. It kind of feels like the first time in a while for us. But I really want to say how much we appreciate, everything D3Hoops.com does for our sport. Without it, a lot of people would not know the detail, at least, or the depth of what goes on in our sport. So I just want to say thank you to Pat, and I'm going to miss him. I know he's leaving it in capable hands, but we're definitely appreciative of all that D3 Hoops does.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the kind words, and I'm sure Pat does as well. You're right. Gordon's a good man, but we'll miss Pat as well. At least he'll be lurking in the background. Appreciate you taking the time, Coach. Good luck this weekend.
Thank you, Dave.
Jim Scheible joining us here from Rochester. I misspoke earlier. I mentioned that Carnegie Mellon had hung 95 points up on Rochester and saying something about 68 points. 68 points is how much Rochester scores a game. They actually give up about 57 points a game, so that 95 is even more surprising. But again, that's that Carnegie Mellon team we mentioned, got through the NCAA tournament so far with 2 big wins. 3 UAA teams again in the tournament. We'll see if they can get 2 into the next weekend. When we come back, plenty more Hoopsville. I'm sure we're going somewhere, so follow us on Twitter to find out exactly who our next guest is, at D3Hoopsville or hashtag Hoopsville. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. Thanks to our partners at the City of Salem for hosting our hotline. Of course, men's championship in Salem in just about a week. Buy your tickets today and join us in the Roanoke Valley for some good times and some good basketball. If you're a women's fan, though, make sure you check out our friends at Capital in Ohio as well. You're listening to Hoopsville. Back with more right after this.
I used to never really talk. Ever. I was scared and shy. It was hard to look at people's faces. I was afraid if I said something wrong, everyone would laugh at me. But then I started to play golf with Special Olympics. I made friends and won lots of gold medals. But I learned more than just playing golf. Special Olympics helped me to find my voice. And now everyone else is speechless.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and I know how powerful words can be. The term gay doesn't mean stupid, lame, or less than.
So I pledge to speak up if I hear the term gay used in a derogatory way or any other homophobic terms.
If you can play in Division III.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and my teammates unconditionally accepted me as part of their family. So now I pledge to do the same for others. If you can play in Division III.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
Cheer for the stumbles. The he shoulda had that's. And the tears that linger. For in those moments, greatness lies. There, you will find the provoked, the determined, the unified. It's in those moments that champions are born.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you're enjoying this show. Our sectional preview as we get ready for the sectionals. Obviously, 32 teams, 16 on both the men and women's side, trying to vie to get to the championship weekends. Of course, on the women's side, that is Capital hosting the Final Four championship in Indianapolis 16 days after that. So we still got some time before we crown a champion in women's basketball. But a week from today, on the men's side, we'll be talking about the 4 teams left who will get a chance to crown a champion in a little over a week. However, we're still talking about women's basketball here. Varying sites, obviously, around the country, and looking to see who might get out of this round of games or this weekend of games. I don't think the hosts are necessarily safe in any of their locations, and that may be very true at St. Thomas, where there is a very good collection of good teams taking to the floor, and including St. Thomas, obviously, but one of the games that's most intriguing, George Fox number 2 versus number 6 UT Tyler. How does this one play out, especially considering I think George Fox may be playing a little above themselves and Tyler might be flying a little bit under the radar despite the number 6 ranking. So we figured we might as well talk about this topic. So joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline, sponsored by the City of Salem, is the head coach for UT Tyler, Kendra Hassel. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville.
Thank you.
I should say welcome back, considering we had you near the beginning of the year.
That's right.
Congratulations on a tremendous season. I know when we talked at the beginning of the year, you were still acclimating yourself a little bit with this program, being a first-year head coach. You certainly had some high expectations. But honestly, did you have expectations of a 29-1 season?
No, I sure did not. I've just been really proud and impressed with how our players have jumped right on board and adopted our philosophy and picked up our new system and everything, and obviously could not be prouder of the effort and the success we've achieved.
Yeah, to say that they've picked up the system might be an understatement. Scoring is very high. I think they've enjoyed that fact. And certainly you guys are playing well, but you're outscoring your opponents by nearly 20 points a game, scoring 84 points a game and allowing 64.5. There's a whole mess of 80 and 90-point games in here. Even a couple of 100-point games in the middle of the season. Was it easier to transition into what you wanted to do than you anticipated?
I think it was, but I knew coming in that we had great shooters and really good scorers overall. And so the transition wasn't too bad because we're really great shooters from the perimeter. Now, filling in the post role after losing an All-American was more of the question mark, and we started to achieve some balance there. And so that's why we're able to still knock down shots on the outside, because we have some inside game that helps open that up.
You have 4 players in double figures. You're shooting 45% from the floor, 35% from beyond the arc, out-rebounding your opponents by about 5 rebounds a game. Michelle Obach leads the way at 18 points a game. Mackenzie May and Deonna Matthews both with 11 and 12 points, and also Alex Cochner with 10.5 points a game. And we shouldn't even forget Raglan, who's got 9 points a game. That's a lot of weapons for you, and certainly all of them have played every single game of the season. When you have that many matchups to deal with, is that a big advantage for the opponent in the sense, I mean, I should say for you against the opponent, considering it doesn't look like you can necessarily double team anybody?
No, you really can't. And just the balance I was talking about of being able to score inside, opening up the perimeter. We've had several opponents who have tried to take Mackenzie out of the game, as the shooting guard on the wing. But when they do, it leaves it one-on-one in the post, or they try to really force Michelle to the ball out of her hands. And someone else always picks up the slack. And you listed the people that have scored double figures or averaging close to it. But we also have some players that have come off the bench and hit, 20 points on a given night. And so to have that balance and the ability to, come in, with bench players that can score it gives us, a whole lot of weapons.
Yeah, and you're also very deep on the bench. You've played 6 players in every single of the 30 games you've had. And you've played another 5 players in 21 of those 30. And then it's a steep drop off from there. Has that depth been an advantage? Is it also maybe a little sign of you still trying to figure out where your key players are, especially coming off the bench?
Right. Early, it definitely was a sign of figuring out who fit the best. And, some players adjust to new systems quicker than others. We've had players step up late and take on more significant roles, but we've also had some injuries. So really, as far as playing in each of our games, we would have had a couple more players that would have played in all 30 if they hadn't been injured at different times. But, we're real impressed with where we are with our depth, and we don't feel like there's a huge drop-off when we have to get someone else in there.
I'm talking to Coach Hassel here, head coach of UT Tyler. Team is into the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, number 6th ranked in the country. I said at the beginning, Coach, you guys might be flying a little bit under the radar. And granted, you're number 6. Technically, that means you're not flying under the radar.
Right.
But at the same time, a team coming out of Texas, not that, first-year head coach for the program, not necessarily a lot known about this squad, especially when you compare back to last year. Different offense, different players technically stepping up. There's a lot of unknowns on the national scale of things. And now you go headlong into George Fox. On paper, to me, this seems like a pretty cool matchup. I don't think there's necessarily a favorite or anybody who's doesn't have a chance in this game. But is the under the radar part helping maybe?
I believe so. I mean, I've always liked to be the underdog, so to speak, and we have not really been in that role all season because in our conference and, to even our non-conference opponents, we've been ranked all year, and so we felt like we had the target on our backs, and now it's kind of nice to be in a different role, just knowing that George Fox is ranked number 2 and they're undefeated, and we have a chance to go and knock off the number 2 team in the country.
Yeah, that would be certainly impressive and a big win for you guys. Obviously, you've hit the road, or I should say the air. Right. You have flown to lovely Minnesota, maybe a change in temperature compared to the central part of Texas. But how has the week gone for your team? Obviously, you hosted over the weekend, but how has everything transitioned for this week?
It's gone well, and from the coaching standpoint, when you're at home a little bit, you have less control over what your players are doing, and I actually like being on the road a little bit. We've had a great travel schedule here. We got here yesterday, been here all day today. We're able to practice already, and I get to make sure they eat good food and go to bed at night. And so from my standpoint, I kind of like being out away from school and whatever they might be doing that distracts them a little bit. But things are going well. We're getting ready to go to the Mall of America and look around since we have a little downtime.
That is perfect. Go see the biggest mall in the world, I think, or at least the country, and take in some of the sights. I don't want to take any shot at Minnesota and say that's all that's up there, because that's not necessarily true. Obviously, St. Thomas is a great place to play, and looking forward to this game. I want to back up the weekend, though. You saw UC Santa Cruz and Claremont Mudscripts. Santa Cruz, kind of the unknown team, hadn't played many D3s in the second half of the season. And then Claremont Mudscripts, who probably was better than people thought they were, certainly got a big win over Trinity, Texas. What did you think of those two games, which you ended up winning relatively easily?
Both games were extremely competitive. The final score was a little bit different than how the game actually went. It was a tight game all the way through against both of them. I thought that they have great competitors on their team. They shoot it really well from the perimeter. They both have size on the inside and actually size on the wing as well. And we haven't seen as much size as that, within our own league. And so that was an adjustment, just figuring out how to score around or through the size. And but I was real impressed with both programs and the way that they played us. I felt like we just sort of outlasted them in the end, and maybe that was could be attributed to our depth a little bit.
Certainly outplayed them in the sense of us scoring them and getting the big victory, and certainly 2 first-round games at home. You played 9 of the last 10 games at home. You've gotten very comfortable with the Harrington Patriot Center. Is making this week maybe a little bit more challenging, especially considering this is a really long trip?
Right. It's always different when you're playing on the road and, shooting in somebody else's gym. The rims are a little bit different. They may be tight or whatever. The backdrop's different. And, of course, we had a lot of success in our own gym, so you take that in, and we had great crowds over the weekend. I was really impressed with our fans and how they came out to support us. So, of course, we'll have that different feel. One benefit is that, we're not playing the home team to start out, so, at least we get George Fox on a neutral court.
Yeah.
So we do have that going.
How hard is it not to look too far ahead? I mean, you're only a couple victories here from heading to Capital and the championship weekend, and that can be tempting. That can to look into that direction and that far and go, we're knocking on the door. How hard is that to resist doing and to truly focus on George Fox?
It really is hard, but just knowing the caliber of team we're going up against makes it a little bit more important that we do stay focused. And we've had that, issue all season. We were undefeated in our league for a long time, and we just had to keep focused on the next game because, you never wanted to get knocked off by someone that you were supposed to beat, so to speak. And so I feel like we've sort of set the standard with our players, and they do a good job of focusing on the task at hand. And we get real specific, obviously with our game plans. And so we just talk about those things, and we're trying not to look too far ahead.
Quickly back to Michelle Obach, if you don't mind. She's a great article written up on the front page of D3Hoops.com. Texas Tyler Ready to Travel features her on the photo, and of course underneath it's hard to ignore. Shoots 45.5% from outside the arc, leads the team in three-pointers made, field goal attempts, points, assists, and steals. So we talked about those previous five certainly as being a catalyst and tough to beat. But man, everything goes through Obach, doesn't it?
It sure does. And the things that the stat sheets don't show is that she's the hardest worker in practice. That she comes in with great energy, and she, obviously once she hits a shot in a game, it just settles everyone down and kind of gives them permission to hit shots too, it feels like. But she does a great job of, the assists show she gets her teammates open and she finds the right people, and she's able to, work to break presses and get us out of scary situations as well. And I just, I can't say enough about her talent and her ability and the way that she has taken on the role of the true point guard, floor general for us.
This team's young. It's got one senior on it. This certainly looks like a really good experience. If you can't get to the championship weekend, looks like a really good experience for next year. How many teams are no longer wanting to play you next season?
I will say scheduling has been more difficult this year, no question.
I had a feeling. I had a gut feeling that might be the case. Now, the only other question is, you lost one game. It was to a pretty good Austin squad. Trinity, Texas, as head coach, talked about Austin when we saw them back in January about it being a good test. You lost to them on the road, 82-73. That was all the way back in mid-December. How hard is it to keep the fire and keep the team understanding that this can be challenging when the last time and the only time you took a loss was 3 months ago?
I think that can be very difficult. And, part of the hardest is the stretch in conference where you're playing some teams that are at the bottom of the league, and you have to get excited about them and find things that motivate you to go out and still play your best and not play to that level. But the Austin College game was a great game for us to sort of kind of re-energize and refocus everyone. And we do revisit that, and the things that did not go well for us in that game and the reasons those things happen as reminders of what we need to stay away from and the things that we need to keep doing better every day in practice. But we talk mostly about, the process and what we need to do each day and not necessarily as much about games. And, every time we step on the court, we're looking to get, 1% better. That's sort of cliche. You've heard that said. But every chance we step out there is a great opportunity to improve. And I think they've really bought into that. We're trying not to take any shortcuts. That's not what has gotten us here. And, even yesterday we had some punishment running for some shortcuts that happened because, it doesn't matter if you're in the round of Sweet 16 or whatever. It takes extremely hard work and effort every time you step on the floor to be successful.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to join us, Coach. Tremendous first season for you at Tyler. Obviously, the team has responded accordingly, and it only looks better from here on, but I'm certainly interested to see how you guys do this weekend. Big game against George Fox, and obviously if you get on beyond that, every game's big anyway. As you may remember, we always give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those maybe tuning in?
Yeah, I would just like to reiterate how proud I am of our team and the effort they've put in all year. And I think that people don't understand how hard it is to win one game, much less to have such a great record. George Fox being undefeated is incredible, and us having lost only one game, it takes extreme focus and, the stuff that you talked about with not looking too far ahead. But it takes really, really hard work. And these players are not just, basketball athletes. They're students, and they have classroom responsibilities to take care of as well. And, I just want people to know how difficult all of it could be to balance. But really proud of our team and excited to be where we are.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Coach. Good luck, as I said. And no matter what, we know we'll be talking about Texas Tyler for a little while to come. But thank you anyway, and good luck.
Thank you.
Kendra Hassel joining us here on Hoopsville. Yeah, big game against George Fox. One loss between the two of them. They will, as we said, will be playing at St. Thomas. Big game coming up, 6:30 Eastern Time, 5:30 Central Time in that game in Minnesota. Obviously to be followed by St. Thomas's game as well. Going to take another break. When we come back, we'll switch gears, go back to some men's basketball, talk to another team who's making a long trip. They're used to traveling up into the upper Midwest for men's basketball games on this weekend. It's Emory, and they're heading to Augustana to play the Augies. We'll hear from Jason Zimmerman coming up. You're listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. Thanks to the City of Salem for hosting the hotline. We'll be back with more right after this.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and I know how powerful words can be. The term gay doesn't mean stupid, lame, or less than.
So I pledge to speak up if I hear the term gay used in a derogatory way or any other homophobic terms.
If you can play in Division III.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and my teammates unconditionally accepted me as part of their family. So now I pledge to do the same for others. If you can play in Division III.
I'm a current Division III student athlete, and I remember how intimidating the first year of college can be.
So if you're a first-year student athlete and nervous about coming out as LGBTQ, I pledge to stand by your side as your ally.
If you can play Division III.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and I believe student athletes can help break down the barriers of exclusion.
I pledge to support and encourage my teammates
to support my campus's LGBTQ student group
by volunteering and participating in events.
If you can play in Division III.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and I believe that everyone should be educated on LGBTQ issues.
I pledge to work with my athletic department and my campus to foster dialogue and create a community of support, respect, and pride.
If you can play in Division III.
We are Division III student athletes, and you can be too. If you can play in Division III.
And welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody. Hope you're enjoying the show. The first hour done. Got one more hour or so left to go. If you got questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville and hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville at D3Hoops.com. Join us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Hoopsville. Of course, Hoopsville presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. Appreciate you taking the time to join in on the show. Getting ready for the sectionals coming up this weekend. 32 teams remain on the men's and women's side. We got only 8 will survive the weekend to move on to play in the championship weekend. 4 teams to Capital to figure out who's going home to the or going on to Indianapolis, I should say. And then obviously we'll have 4 teams head to Salem for the Division III men's championship weekend there. One of those teams who seems to routinely get shipped out to the Midwest, really, because as we described earlier in the show, there isn't much else you can do with Emory because the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic areas are full of teams. You can't find a pod opening for them. Emory's been shipped out to the Midwest, I think 3 years in a row now. They're maybe getting used to it, but at least they've gotten a couple home games in the meantime. Doesn't matter. A team that started the season 4-3, got their legs under them for the UAA, won their 3rd UAA title in 4 years. Their reward this weekend, they're playing the number 1 team in the country at the number 1 team in the country's home. Well, we'll find out more about that. Jason Zimmerman joins us on the Hoopsville hotline, sponsored by the City of Salem. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville, sir.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having me. Excited about being able to talk.
I appreciate you taking the time. Obviously, you and I chatted back at the Hoopsville Classic when you came to town. Just you and St. Thomas doing me proud. I appreciate that. You took on St. Thomas and Stevenson in games 4 and 5 of what was a jam-packed November. How do you think you guys are different between then and now?
Yeah, it's been an interesting year. You know, we lost some really good players, 4 seniors from last year's team, player of the year in the UAA, and defensive player of the year in UAA, our starting point guard, and our 6th man. So we lost 4 guys. So at that time in November, we had all those games scheduled. We were kind of searching ourselves. We went through some injury in the preseason, and we were really searching for our team, our identity, and as you said, we ended up 4-3. We played good teams, and we played a lot of road games. So, but 4-3 is looking at it as not a great place to be for a team that wants to be better, obviously. But I think we text back and forth after that 4-3, and I think the text was, hey, it's going to be a process with this team, and the guys have been phenomenal since that point. Just getting better every day, and not trying to look too far ahead, but hey, let's just try to do a little bit better and see where we can take this story of a season. And they've done a great job, and we're excited to be here and still playing.
It's interesting. You've almost had a season of thirds. That month of January was the first 7 games for you guys. You were 4-3. The next 7 games took place in December, where you only played 3 games. That's a little weird. And a few games in January. You went 5-2 there, so a little bit of an improvement. Since then, the next 11 games, you're 9-2. It's almost like you've been building. The season built yourself in stages. You had a rough start and a jam-packed start. You then had a spread out kind of second set of 7 there that you did a little bit better, and then figured everything out. And since then, have really been on a roll.
Yeah, it's funny because we haven't really looked at it like that. I mean, now that we look back, we can see that. We kind of say, hey, this is kind of what happened. But really, we've just been saying, hey, how much can we get better today? Can we do something in this game? Can we compete and have a chance to win? And you look at a lot of our scores. I mean, a lot of them come down to the last 2 minutes, 4 minutes, and you have to make a play to win, or we haven't made shots, we found a way to win, or we made shots, found a way to win. But this season, and we talked about it when we set our goals at the beginning of the season. We don't set how many wins you want to have or a number or anything like that. Obviously, everybody wants to win them all. But this team, kind of the seniors, kind of said, hey, let's just take it one day at a time, and in the end, let's see how far we can get, or let's see what our story can be. And they stayed true to that. And playing Augustana in the Sweet 16 is a great part of that story.
I misspoke. I said the next 11. It was the next 13. You went 11-2 in next 13. Obviously, winning the conference was important. The UAA was a little bit on its head. Chicago started off strong, as expected. We're number 1 at about the turn, for a golf reference there for everybody. Right. Just short of the turn. Let's say they were approaching the 9th hole in the lead. And then things flipped. You guys made the trip with Rochester out there. You got control of the conference at about that point. And then you had a battle with Rochester with NYU nipping at your heels. This isn't exactly how everybody thought the UAA would turn out. Did you even think you'd be in the mix?
Yeah, I don't know if we thought we'd be in the mix. I thought we had a chance, obviously. I think when we talked in November, the league had so many moving parts, right? Like Chicago had everybody back, and NYU had some seniors. We had some guys we thought would be pretty good. Rochester had some good juniors that we thought could be pretty good. So, we try not to look ahead and say, hey, here's where we're going to be. But we had a great week, 2 swings, actually, in the meter part of the season where we went Chicago Wash and then Chicago Wash again, and we were fortunate enough to win those 4. That's when really we thought, hey, we could do something pretty special here and win the league. And winning our league twice in a row, or outright twice in a row, and 3 of the last 4. Our guys take great pride in that. It's such a difficult league because of the travel, because of the Sunday at noon games, and you have to be lucky. And I mean, Rochester went through injuries, Chicago went through injuries, NYU went through their injuries. So everybody goes through their spell where you have to fight fatigue, you have to fight some of those things and play well. And we were fortunate enough to be able to play Rochester there at the end. And I mean, Luke did a heck of a job this year. He wins 9 UAA games in a row.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible, to be able to win 9 UAA games in a row. It's really difficult to do. And Luke had that run. I know Chicago had a run where they won 12 in a row. NYU had a run this year where they won, I believe, 12, 13 in a row. So we had some really good teams in our league that we're fortunate enough to come out on top. But we take great pride in that. And, Wash U won 5 in a row down the stretch. Case won some big ones down the stretch. So, and we got beat by Brandeis and Case. So we take great pride in that. I think our league is a very difficult one, and it's a great experience for our student athletes. And we're very fortunate and proud to represent the UAA.
Your question at the beginning of the season and throughout the season was, how does Emory replace Alex Foster and others that you lost? I mean, they such an integral part of this team and integral in bringing you guys to where you are. Well, you replace him with, it turns out, 4 guys: Will Trowick, Adam Giggix, Davis Rao, Jonathan Terry, all in double figures in scoring, all of them with 4 or more rebounds a game. There isn't anybody who dominates the stat sheet. This has turned, Alex Foster was a tremendously good talent, and obviously, that was the offense. You wanted to get it to him. You seem to have a different kind of all-encompassing team offense now.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of the struggle at the beginning of the year was, we were so used to giving the ball to Alex in the late clock or late game and saying, hey, he's going to make a play. And this year, we didn't necessarily have that. Will definitely was the guy that we went to, and he kind of grew into that. But it wasn't, hey, we're gonna get the ball to him on the side and let him score. It was more of a, hey, if I'm open, I'm going to be able to score. But as we got through the UAA and we won some big games down the stretch, it really was guys trusting each other. So if I didn't have a shot, I trusted to throw the next pass, and then I trusted to throw the next pass. And we made some big plays because of that trust. And it was very different than the last year with Alex Foster or the year before Jake Davis. And those guys were very good at and could score anytime they had it. They were a threat to score. We think we have a lot of threats out there to score this year. And it's just got to be the right guy stepping up at the right time. So it's definitely a different a feel for a coach. I mean, just as our guys were going through it, I was going through it, our staff was going through it. Where do we want to take this last possession, or what do we want to do late clock? So it was a growing process, and the guys have done a great job of getting better and trusting each other and being committed to what we're doing. So definitely a process throughout the year, and one we're really happy with where we are right now.
Augustana is your next team. Obviously, big challenge ahead. Number 1 team in the country. You're playing them at their place. You've certainly gotten used to making the trip out to the Midwest, whether it be Wisconsin or Illinois. You got to go into Rock Island. You're at Rock Island. What did you see on tape? What do you think you can take advantage of obviously everyone's favorite to get to Salem? Can you ruin the day?
Oh, I don't know about that. We're going to play possession at a time and see what we can do and put ourselves in position, hopefully, to win the game. They're phenomenal. Does a great job, and their senior leadership. Obviously, they have 7 seniors, I believe. But you watch them on film. I was telling people that I watched 10 minutes of them on Sunday night, and I shut off the computer and went to sleep because I figured it was going to be a long week getting ready for them. They're very impressive on film, strong, mature, been through all kind of battles. So it's going to be a challenge. You talked about coming to Augustana. The last 4 years we've been in the tournament, and 3 years. The last 3 we've made it to this level, around at least. But we've gone to Whitworth. The first year we went to Whitworth in a round of 32, and their environment was unbelievable in their gym in the NCAA tournament. The last 2 years we played Point and at Stevens Point and played Whitewater the first year after that, and at Stevens Point. And now we get to come to this atmosphere in Augustana, and I haven't been in here, obviously, but watching it on film, just excited for our guys to be part of this atmosphere and be able to go into a place like this in Division III, this level. Those are 3 or 4 of the best environments at our level to play a game, and to be able to do to be in those environments the last 4 years and compete is really exciting for our program. And it helps you play better. Obviously, it takes you got to be able to play with that the noise, and not just the noise, but those teams like Whitworth 4 years ago, or the last 4 years, Stevens Point, Augustana, they're tremendous teams. It's not just the environment, it's the programs that we get to play. So excited about the opportunity, and we'll see what we can do to compete tomorrow.
I got a message from John Tyre. Apparently he's listening to the show. He says, stop sandbagging.
Oh, he knows we're not sandbagging. He kicked our butt, at Hoopsville. I've gotten to know John, obviously. That's a great, one of the great parts about Hoopsville. We got to know some guys that I hadn't met, and got to know John throughout the years. So he knows I'm not sandbagging. He kicked our butt there. But I'm sure he'll be ready to go for sure.
Oh, I'm sure. Of course, both of you guys in Rock Island. I will be in Chicago. There's an outside chance I might be daring enough to drive across Illinois on Saturday. Well, I'm going to want to see what the outcomes are at both locations first. Jason, I'm running behind time, so I want to let you go, but I really appreciate you coming on the show. Good luck, obviously, on Friday against Augustana, and nothing against anybody else there, but it would be really funny if St. Thomas and Emory faced off in the Elite Eight, just because of the last 2 minutes here on the show. As always, though, we give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those tuning in?
No, every time on, I just want to thank you guys for D3 Hoops and Hoopsville, and you, Dave, for all you do. Hey, Pat's leaving us, but all that you guys do for our level of basketball and just basketball in general, and getting the word out there. Some phenomenal basketball teams and atmospheres, environments, student athletes, and we just appreciate all you do for that. I think we have a very good basketball team. Our seniors have done a great job for our program. Like I said, our seniors are 3 UAA championships and 4 NCAA tournaments, 3 Sweet 16s, and Elite 8. They have 81 wins at Emory. Just really proud of those guys, and we look forward to competing tomorrow against a great team. And but thanks for all you do for Division III basketball and all of us. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Jason. Appreciate it as well. Maybe I'll see you in Salem. Good luck this weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Dave.
Jason Zimmerman joining us on the City of Salem Hoopsville hotline. Appreciate him taking the time out there in Rock Island, Moline, Davenport, however you want to call the Quad City area on the Mississippi River. Again, they take on number 1 Augustana. Game time 8:30 local or Eastern, 7:30 Central and local time. Going to take another break. When we come back, Amherst men's basketball Dave Hixon is taking a break from his dinner to join us on the show. We'll talk to him about the used to be called a mascot team, now the purple team in Central Massachusetts. We'll talk to him about that squad coming up. You're listening to Hoops Hope, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. Once again, thanks to the City of Salem, sponsor of our Hoopsville hotline. Buy your tickets to the men's championship weekend and join us in the Roanoke Valley next week. More Hoopsville after this.
With every basket and every stop, the skill of elite student athletes will be on display. The sights, the sounds, the intensity of an NCAA championship. It all comes down to this moment, and the winner takes it all. Be there to share the experience with your family and friends. The 2016 NCAA Division III Men's Basketball Championship, March 18th and 19th at Salem Civic Center in Salem, Virginia. Visit ncaa.com/tickets to score your championship seats today.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor's Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.D3Hoops.com.
I'm a current Division III student athlete, and I remember how intimidating the first year of college can be.
So if you're a first-year student athlete and nervous about coming out as LGBTQ, I pledge to stand by your side as your ally.
If you can play Division III.
We are Division III student athletes, and you can be too. If you can play in Division III.
Oh, I'm back. I forgot about my own cue. Apparently the director did not cue the talent. That'd be Dave not cueing Dave. Sorry about that. Welcome back to Hoops Hope, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. A couple more guests here, and plus your questions to wrap up the show. We'll also talk quickly about the Jostens coming up. If you've got any questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville and hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville@D3Hoops.com. Join us on Facebook, facebook.com/Hoopsville. Just got done talking to Emory men's basketball coach Jason Zimmerman. Once again, thanks to him for coming on the show. Now we'll jump all the way from the Mississippi River, literally the shores of. We will jump all the way to the shores of the Atlantic Ocean the Boston area. That's where Amherst is located because they're at Tufts this weekend, kicked out of their own gym by the women's program. What can you do, right? Joining us on the Hoopsville Hotlines, presented by the City of Salem, is the head coach of Amherst, Dave Hixon, number 15th ranked team. Coach, welcome to Hoopsville.
A pleasure to be here.
I can't believe it's been this long since we talked to you. You are usually a usual guest of the show. I struggle not to get you on the show. This year, we found others in New England to talk to and somehow pushed you aside. I hope you don't mind.
No, it's all good. It's sometimes it's great to be overlooked and stay under the radar.
I don't blame you a bit there. Hey, so number one, well, I should say not number one, but you guys finished second in the conference behind Trinity. You end up in yet another conference tournament game, and unfortunately another low seed beat you guys for the title, and you guys get in as an at-large. The NESCAC, before we get to the season and before we get to the tournament, the NESCAC has kind of evolved into a bit of a beast.
Yeah, it really has. There was a time, when you really couldn't pick who the bottom teams were going to be. And, we leave 3 out. 3 don't make the tournament, which is really unfortunate. And, for instance, Colby, I thought Colby was as good as anybody. They had all those seniors. Unfortunately, they had injuries and stuff, but you just go right down the list of teams, and it's a tough conference.
Obviously it's always been tough, but it's just deeper than it used to be. I'm even hearing, before I jump into all the more important stuff, I'd love to get your opinion on something. I'm hearing a few coaches, and one of them, Joe Riley from Wesleyan, said it on this show, talking about they'd like to maybe go to a double round robin in this conference, maybe give everybody a better chance at settling themselves out for starters, and maybe create a better conference tournament. What's your thought on that? I heard a chuckle.
Yeah, I don't... I was one of the founding fathers that we at one point in time even we tried to have a 10-team tournament so everybody could be in it. Now we're 11, so it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But the double round robin piece, that's not that's okay. I mean, if we do it, we do it. It's not really for me. I'm just I just am not going on the road to Waterville, Maine, at least once every year. I have to tell you that, like, every other year I have my 3 main trips, Bowdoin, Colby, and Bates, all in the same year. And then the other one's the Hamilton, Williams, Middlebury. So I guess one offsets the other. But, you do that every year, to go to Hamilton, to go to Colby every year. And, if the young guys want to do that and stuff, I'll do it. But, I love the way we do it right now. Because, and the other thing it allows us to do is that it really allows us to play out of conference games. And that's what I love about the NCAA is that, you like, for instance, and maybe we'll get there eventually, but this tournament this weekend, except for 2 points, if Trinity beats Johnson and Wales, it's the NESCAC semifinals again, and yet you're in the 8-16 of the NCAA's. You substitute Babson for Middlebury, and so my thing is that, like, I love playing Brandeis. Me and such a good coach, and does such a great job with that program, and so, like, I love playing them every year. I love playing Stevie Brennan every year, and here we are playing them again. But they're all good friends, and we wouldn't play them if we went double round robin. We probably wouldn't play them. And we play some. I love playing Eastern Connecticut. I love playing Rhode Island College. Used to be how we used to sort of sharpen our teeth for the tournament because they were better. They were a different type of team that no doubt someplace along the road we were going to meet in the NCAA tournament. And NESCAC schools aren't like Rhode Island College was, and so Rhode Island under Bob Walsh was an amazing. We had some wars, and so you take out Rhode Island, you take out Eastern, you take out Brandeis, you take out Babson. That's a strong schedule. I really miss playing those guys, and I think when you go double round robin with 11 teams, I think you basically do.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily think you could go double round robin. I think you maybe go to an ODAC model, personally, but that's beside the point. I'd love to see it because I'm biased. I like to see these Williams. Obviously, you play Williams twice, but I want to see these other matchups twice. That's just me. It's because I want to see it. But I'm coming from a completely different point of view. Coach, obviously this season was interesting because you guys kind of had an up and down. You started really strong. Then you kind of got a couple, stumbles. Colby got you, Wesleyan got you, Tufts got you, and Rhodes randomly got you in January. And so everyone's kind of like, what's going on? And then Middlebury got you at the end of the tournament. You have seemed like you're flying a little bit under the radar, which isn't, I'm not used to a team from Central Massachusetts who wears purple doing that all that often.
Yeah, I keep trying to, we were grinding all year, because we did have some ups and downs, and we were inconsistent from the foul line. Dreadful when we played Colby and we lose by 2. Rhodes, I'll tell you what, I don't think I've taken a trip maybe once or twice. I think when you saw me down at Goucher, we won 2 on that trip. But we typically split on the trip just because our guys have had 2 weeks off and we're just back and the whole thing. And we played Western. We beat Western by 26, I think it was. And I could see it in my guys' eyes when we went down, even though I was banging my fist on the table, trying to get them ready. We thought, hey, we beat them by 26. We're better than there. And we were horrible. And again, Joe's guys played well. I'm not taking anything away from Joe. We've had inconsistency, absolutely, positively, no doubt. And so the funny thing is, we're like 19-4, and we're grinding. I mean, in the office is brutal. We're grinding, trying to figure it out, just solve the puzzle, right? And I finally had to say, hey, guys, stop. We're 19-4. We're not 4-19.
Yeah.
And so, here we are, 24 and 5.
Yeah.
And I'd take that any year, and yet we have been inconsistent. And so I'll tell you, when we play well, and I remember seeing you last year, early January at Goucher, and telling you, boy, I'd hate to play us in March. That was even last year, and it's the same group this year. And on our day, we're really good, and we've had some real stumbles too. And so I'm hoping this weekend I hope we're on the good vibes this weekend.
Got Connor Green, the senior, and leading the team at 15 points a game, 6.5 rebounds. 3 other guys in double figures: Johnny McCarthy, a junior; Jade Dawson, a sophomore; Jeff Racy, a junior. You also have David George, a junior, who's at 9 points a game. Most of those guys also haul in their fair share of rebounds. McCarthy and George, 5 or more to go along with Green. Dawson's handing out 3.5 assists. Certainly a nice team. But as you said, inconsistency, that's certainly what I've seen as well. So as you move yourself forward into the NCAA tournament here, obviously you want to be more consistent. How do you work to gain that consistency, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, free throw consistency is one of the issues. And, we're 9 for 11 against Cortland, and we win by 1. So I'll take 9 for 11. But the night before we're not good. When we lost to Middlebury, I think if you include the 3 front ends that we didn't get to shoot, the 2 back ends we didn't get to shoot because we missed front ends, I think we were 10 for 21, and we lose. And we're basically, we score a basket with 33 seconds to go that puts us up 1, and they wave it off because they said we carried the ball. But that's how close it was, and you can't shoot free throws like that. So what do you do with free throws? We've tried all sorts of games. We've tried competitive games. We've tried, shooting more. And some nights we shoot them well, some nights we don't. And so that's an inconsistency that I still haven't figured out exactly. We work with kids a lot on their shots. The other piece, is, our point guards are interesting because Jade, who starts, is a dynamic player. Reed, though, if you look at the assists, the turnover ratio, Reed's better. And so they're 2 different types of point guards. And the good news is they've played off each other pretty well this year. They did not play off each other, for instance, up at Colby. They both had bad days, and that's when we're not very good, is when our point guards are inconsistent as well. And so, it's been a puzzle. It's a good puzzle. I've really enjoyed. I've loved the kids, but it's been a real puzzle. And we've, I've got Aaron Toomey and Kevin Hopkins on the staff, 2, wonderful players in their own right, and then J.D. I from Washington Lee, who was a great player for Washington Lee. So we got some good staff guys, and it's been a puzzle for us. We've been grinding, trying to figure it out, and you win 2 more, you're in Salem though. So
that's true. 2 more, and I get to see you. Curious, you got Babson ahead of you. Obviously, This game's at Tufts. It's a New England pod. We got a very interesting squad in Johnson and Wales in there as well, but. How do you prepare for Babson on the two thoughts? If Flannery's back, if Flannery's not back. I assume you prepare for him if Flannery's there, but how do you also adjust then anything you're doing in game should Flannery not be able to play?
Yeah, I don't think we adjust. I think we're planning on Flannery playing. We're planning on him being 90 to 100%. And I think if you prepare for that, then you're ready for the next thing, because the next guy down, isn't Flannery, and I think it's a lot easier to adjust down. And that's not saying Babson's a bad. They're not going to be a bad team either. The difference, I think, in what they're doing right now, this kid, and I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but Commonality is, he's a racy type shooter, and he's really spread, the offense out now, and so the defense gets spread out, and the big kids have come into their own. So they're a really good team anyway. But I think you have to prepare, because I'll tell you what, if you prepare at all the other way and get that in your kids' heads at all, and Flannery shows up, that's a real problem, because he's so good. And I think you can always go down a little bit, it's not much, but you go down a little bit, and the guy, it's usually McCarthy that has to cover him the bulk of the time, can sort of take a little breath and say, okay, now I'm going to cover this guy, and they're a lot different than Flannery. And Flannery's really one of a kind in New England right now.
Can you take anything? You two, Babson and Amherst, played an epic double overtime game in the middle of December. I remember calling that thing up and was just loving watching that game. But can you take anything from that game at this point in the season? I know you probably looked at it 6 ways to Sunday, but can you use anything from that game, or has so much changed, maybe with Babson, but especially with your team, that it almost makes that game maybe somewhat irrelevant?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are certainly parts of the game that are irrelevant, but Steve's a terrific coach, and Steve believes in doing certain things certain ways. And you're not going to change a whole lot on those things, because they do them really well. And, so that's what we've done this week. If we've sort of looked back, we've tried to figure out exactly things that worked, things that didn't work, and how to expose, what they do really well, and use it to our advantage. And so, although it's somewhat irrelevant, not totally. And it really, you watch what Flannery did in that game, and he was at full strength then. I think their bigs have gotten better. I think, their bigs have gotten more comfortable. Jax is young. Nelson was a transfer. I think transfers coming in the first month or so with their team, it's just hard to find your niche. And I think they've both found their niche now. So, but they do a lot of the same things in the post now as well. And so, we've worked on it. We work a lot. Different people use different services, but we use crossover, and so our guys are breaking stuff down all the time, looking at how the individuals score, how they play defense, and how we can attack it. And so we've put a lot of work into it, and I think that game has still some stuff that's going to be the same. I tell you right now, I mean, Steve knows too. There are certain things that I do, and I think are really good, and I'm not changing those. And so he's going to go out and work on those.
You've been doing them since '77, Coach. We don't expect you to change them. You're still looking at the old 3-point line. Curious, can you get to Salem?
I think any one of these teams could get to Salem. That's the interesting thing. So I want to say Tufts beat Babson. It was either overtime, might have been overtime. We beat Babson. I think that was at Tufts, and then we beat Babson, in double overtime. Could have gone either way. Both games could have gone, but I just talked about could have gone either way. I think that, and then we come in first half, stink the gym out against Tufts, come back, but end up losing by 11 or something, and then we beat them in the NESCAC semis, which again was an epic game. It was a great, great game, and not because we won it, but because it was just a really well-played game. And now they've lost Vinny Pace. I know they got good kids too. They got a kid stepping in who's shooting the heck out of the ball now in Vinny's spot. But so those three teams, I think anything could happen. Johnson and Wales, they're the sort of the fly in the ointment here, and they're different. They're different than the NESCACs. They're different than the New Macs. They got some kids that can really play. You know, the fact that they would go out and, you know, beat up on Albertus is a pretty big statement. And so, you know, they're really good. And I was talking to Bob Shelton tonight and just sort of said, look, here's the deal. They're two different styles of games. I mean, there's the NESCAC game and then this Johnson Wales game. And our kids, you know, if our kids can execute and break their press and their stuff and make the open threes that you're going to get at the end of that, then we're going to win. If our kids panic and get caught up in their athleticism and get trapped and, you know, lose the ball and or panic taking shots, I mean, then, you know, then it goes the other way. And so I do really think it's a toss-up here. I think it's, you know, I like our guys. I like the way they've been playing. I'll tell you what, the Cortland game was a great game, too. And it's sort of the way, you know, basketball is supposed to, that the officials wanted to play it this year. There were very few fouls. There was great execution. You know, at one point in time, they're playing 6'7", 6'6", 6'3", 6 foot, and every single guy shoots it at 38% or above. And it was, you know, their big kid, David George, had to go out and play him, and he makes 6 threes. And so it was an amazing game. I actually don't know how we won it. We came back at the end, which the night before was different because the night before, like it was like roller derby. I mean, there were guys all over the floor, and fouls by us, fouls by them, no calls. It was a crazy game. But you know, so I think we're playing well, and I think we certainly have shown people we're down 4 or 5 points late in each game and come back and win it. So I think we can win. I think we played tough. Well, I think is when Vinny Pace was with them, it was crazy good, and I think they still are good. But you know, we beat them by 3 in the NESCAC on neutral court, and it, you know, so I think we have the ability to get there. I honestly do, and you know, it's going to be a really interesting weekend. Again, I wish they weren't all, you know, New England teams, and having played Babson and Tufts already, but that's okay. I mean, I think the fun of the NCAA is always playing new teams. But I think this pod's an interesting pod, and like I said, I think that Johnson Wales is a wild card.
Before I let you go, you have been living on the dangerous side of things. Again, the first 2 games at home against Hudson by 2 and by Cortland by 1. That's enough to give a coach even more gray hairs. But what can a team learn from those 2 experiences as well?
Yeah, well, so let's go 2 steps back further. You know, so we beat Tufts by 3, and we lose at the end to Middlebury.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's unbelievable. And so, you know, we've played 4 really close games in a row, and I really do. What you learn is that you believe you can win. You know, you start to believe that. One of the things that happened, we ran out of timeouts at the end of the Cortland game, and we're trying to bark at our kids to tell them what we wanted to do. We had fouls to give. We didn't really want to let them get up the floor to get in position to shoot the ball. And our kids are talking, probably like they've never talked all year long. And so, you know, you could see it happen. It was good stuff. And I'm thinking like, okay, this is good. So, you know, you hope it all comes back the next time you play, which will be tomorrow night. And Babson's really good, and looking forward to a great game. But I got to tell you, I love my team. I wouldn't bet my house. I wouldn't bet my house in this pod, although I think we certainly can win it.
I think it's a wide open pod. It's certainly going to be fun.
Yeah.
Have you had any crosswords with GP Gromacki about the fact that they didn't allow you to stay at home? I'm kidding. I'm kidding. They're obviously playing well and deserve to be there as well. You kicked them out the first weekend, so.
Well, and then if you remember, a couple of years ago, we got kicked out in the and got sent down to Franklin and Marshall, which was a tough draw for us to go down there.
I was there.
Yep, and that so it's you know, it's I wish there was another way they could do it, because it's there are a lot of schools. The GP's team will always be good. I know that, and we've been pretty good too. We've made it 15 out of the last 16 years, and so it's tough when you're now teams that only have a good men's team. It's so spectacular to have the NCAA at your place. Like, this is the first time I think Tufts has had one.
Yeah, on the men's side, women have had it, but not on the men's.
Right, and so this is really special for them, and you know, people don't know, they don't get it until they get there, how special it is. And so it's a shame that when you get shipped on the road, when you've spent the whole year, you know, earning the #1 seed. But there you go. That's the way life is right now.
Well, it's interesting. I think you should just go build a whole new facility on the Amherst campus. That's all. Just a thought. Or ask the big boy, Mass, if you can use their facilities.
Yeah,
There you go.
$30 million practice facility.
Yeah, exactly. Go over there. That's all you need.
Right.
Well, Dave, I appreciate you coming on the show as always. Good luck this weekend. Even if you don't make it, you ought to come to Salem anyway. But if your team makes it, I'll look forward to seeing you. As always, you give the coach the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those tuning in?
No, just congratulations to everybody else that's still playing, and it's great stuff. It's exciting, and as always, I always finish by thanking you and all the stuff that you do for us. And how many years have you guys been doing this now?
Show's been on the air for 15 years in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. In 15 years, and we all take it for granted now that you get up in the morning, you type in D3 Hoops, or you push your little icon, and you go to all the scores, you get all, stories, you get, features, you get all this stuff that now everybody takes for granted. And you guys have made that possible for us. And, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dave. Appreciate the kind words. Good luck, and we'll talk to you soon, all right?
All right, man.
Dave Hixon joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline, sponsored by the City of Salem. Should mention, Hoopsville has been around 15 years. This is our 13th year on the air. D3 Hoops has been around 20-plus years. We've been around now a good long chunk of time. And if you missed the news, Pat Coleman is stepping aside from the day-to-day operations. He'll still be around. Well, Gordon Mann will pick up his responsibilities, and I'll still be here and pick up some extra responsibilities, and we'll bring on a third guy as well, or gal, to man the fort, as it were. Let's take another break. When we come back, Wooster men's basketball coach Steve Moore joins us. We're quite a bit behind, but I enjoyed my conversation with Dave Hixon and didn't want to cut it short. But Steve Moore coming up on Hoopsville. You listen to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. Wooster head coach Steve Moore joins us on the City of Salem hotline, coming up next.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and I know how powerful words can be. The term gay doesn't mean stupid, lame, or less than.
So I pledge to speak up if I hear the term gay used in a derogatory way or any other homophobic terms.
If you can play in Division III.
I'm a Division III student athlete, and my teammates unconditionally accepted me as part of their family. So now I pledge to do the same for others. If you can play in Division III.
For the love of the game. That's what it's all about, they say. But for those of us who are Division III student athletes, it's more than that.
It's more about team and the schools and communities we represent.
And for the many of us blessed with the strength to compete in sport at the college level, we understand that with what we were given comes a special obligation.
Our obligation to help those who have their own special needs and whose love for the game is no less intense.
That is why NCAA Division III teamed up with Special Olympics. Since August of 2011, we and others from Division III campus communities have volunteered more than 250,000 hours, time away from the classroom and practice field, reaching across the country to coach and mentor Special Olympics athletes.
And to learn that in giving, we receive so much more in return. Help us keep that dream alive.
Be part of it.
Get involved.
You can make a difference.
Division III allows you to give yourself to other things.
Having that free time allows me to pursue the things that I want to pursue.
Division III athletics affords students the opportunity to, engage in the other interests in their campus and in their lives outside of that sport.
It allows you to just be able to do everything you want to do. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Welcome back to Hoopsville, everybody, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. I'm your host, Dave McHugh. Hope you're enjoying the program as we get ready for the sectional weekend in Division III. Lots to talk about, certainly, and we're trying to cover as much as we feasibly can. If there is anybody in the tournament still who we aren't talking to tonight, and we may have talked to on Sunday, so go check out our archives from Sunday's show, and you'll hear from the likes of Oswego State, for example, and others who are still in the tournament, but we're just not talking to tonight. Can't talk to all 32 teams in the last two nights, but we're certainly trying to pick and choose, and we're talking to teams, for the most part, that we have not talked to this season, believe it or not. Something about our timing, even despite more shows, being able to talk to more schools this year, that's an advantage of parity. The other advantage, too, is that we're just getting lucky, to be completely honest. I think we only have maybe one or two repeats the whole night. One of those schools, interesting enough, we have not talked to all season long, would be the Wooster Scots men's basketball team. Certainly had an interesting season this year, maybe down in many people's minds, but certainly still powerful and still challenging. And they got a big win, obviously, earlier in the year that we talked about over Ohio Wesleyan. 23-7, currently still in the NCAA tournament after beating Lancaster Bible, the undefeated Lancaster Bible Chargers in the first round, and then coming from behind to beat Endicott in overtime. All these games at Catholic. Now the team's back on the road and heading to Oswego. And joining us on the Hoopsville Hotline, presented by the City of Salem, is Steve Moore, head coach of Wooster. Coach, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having us, Dave.
Appreciate you taking the time. Listen, this is an interesting season for you guys. I think a lot of people expected you guys to take a step back a little bit because of the amount of talent you lost last year and the talent that you're kind of fostering now. And obviously things are a lot more competitive, both in conference, in region, and nationally. That it's a different landscape.
Most definitely, Dave. And yes, we did have 3 4-year players graduate off of last year's team, and 2 of those guys were first-team all-conference for us. So we had some big shoes to fill. We knew we would probably not play great basketball early on, as we were mixing in some new guys and other players who were returning, playing in new roles. So we thought that our best basketball would be later in the season, and we did improve as the season went along.
When you look at the season, you started off 2-2, couple tough losses early on, one of them to Skidmore and then another to Ohio Wesleyan, of course, at their place. Then you had another loss in Puerto Rico to Salisbury and then another one to Marietta. Interesting enough, those losses kind of bracketed in a 3-game stretch, 2 in 3 games, then 2 in another 3 games. Then it seemed like you guys kind of found your legs a little bit. Yeah, you lost to Wittenberg, obviously a rivalry game there at their place. You lost to Hiram in an interesting game later in the season. But for the most part, you seemed to find your legs. You're starting to win some tough games. What was it about the midway point or the holiday break that seemed to switch you guys in a different direction?
Well, that's right, Dave. I think some of our new guys were adjusting in college basketball. We moved 2 of our freshmen into the starting lineup. And they played some good basketball for us. I think for the most part, it was just guys learning their roles and adjusting to college basketball, and just improvement made by individual players as we went along.
You then had some fascinating games later in the season. Obviously, you beat Ohio Wesleyan during that stretch, 91-90, in a thriller at your place. And then later in the season, Denison got you guys in the championship game. Of course, Denison was just riding a wave. They beat the big 3 W's, as it were, Wittenberg, Ohio Wesleyan, and yourselves. But you guys got into the NCAA tournament despite that. Is there anything you guys have been able to take from the losses and keep moving forward? Is there ever a good timed loss necessarily for a run like this?
Well, Dave, I think it seems like you always learn more when you lose. If you win a close game, even if you didn't play well, there's a tendency to gloss over things that you didn't do well. But when you lose, you really examine things hard. And we did that after each loss this season. I think playing the tough non-league schedule, the teams you mentioned, Skidmore, Salisbury, Marietta, really helped make us better. Those games challenged us, and even though we lost, we improved as a result. That's what we always look to do. And then even after the Denison game, even though it was late in the year, it made us take a hard look at things, and I think we improved as a result of that also.
When you talk about that out-of-conference schedule and the challenges with it, obviously everyone has discovered that it's good to get a little bit of a challenge outside of conference, but the conference has certainly changed a little bit. Ohio Wesleyan certainly now more of a preeminent favorite in the mix now. Wittenberg's fallen off, but is now kind of returning to their former glory. Hiram's in the mix. You've had Denison certainly in play. The rest of this conference has had kind of a shakeup with who's competitive. In the middle has certainly gotten tougher. Has that made Wooster's program even better?
Well, there's no doubt, Dave, that our conference, the North Coast Athletic Conference, has improved from top to bottom a great deal in the last few years. Our strength of schedule has risen because of that. Our teams are doing better out of the league. Some new coaches have come in and just built their programs and improved their programs. DePaul, even though they were young this year and didn't have as good a year, of course, last year they won the conference tournament. Right. That's changed our conference by bringing another real powerful athletic program into the conference. So yes, it's just the landscape of our conference has changed a lot over the last 3 and 4 years.
When you looked at what you guys did, you traveled to Catholic in the opening weekend, obviously, and then you took on Lancaster Bible and ultimately Endicott. That's kind of teams you may not have faced those styles before, especially Lancaster Bible in that opening game. How did you guys prepare for the Chargers, and what did that game kind of turn into?
Well, Dave, a big part of our preparation was just a huge emphasis on taking care of the ball, not turning it over, because they scored so many. This year they scored so many of their points as a result of steals, opponents' turnovers. A huge game that we took a lot from was the fact that they beat Franklin and Marshall. Of course, everybody made a big deal about Lancaster Bible's schedule not being strong, but when we saw that they beat Franklin Marshall by 28 points, and of course everybody's familiar with Franklin Marshall's program. If you do that, you're legit. You have good talent. You're a good team, and so that really alerted us to the fact that we needed to take care of the basketball against those guys.
Was that ultimately the difference? I mean, it certainly on paper looked, and I saw a little bit of video, but it certainly on paper looked like a great X's and O's game. It certainly seemed like Lancaster Bible was right there in it for the most part. They just missed some open looks that may have changed the dynamic of the game.
They did, and they're a good basketball team. There's no doubt about it, David. But, I think they only scored 32 points in the first half, averaging 94 points a game going in.
Yeah.
And so I think, a lot of people will say our defense was the key, and we think we did play pretty good defense, but our efficient offense was the big key, I think. The fact that we didn't turn it over that much in the first half, we did not take many ill-advised shots, and therefore they were not able to get their transition game going.
You then faced Endicott in the next round. Obviously, Endicott with the upset of Catholic, so you kind of had a quiet gym, except for the strong Scots faithful who showed up in Washington, D.C., and by all accounts, they were certainly vocal. Endicott, you guys had to come from pretty far back, double digits back, just to force overtime. Was there a bit of a letdown after the Lancaster Bible game?
I'm not real sure, Dave. It's hard to explain. I asked our players, afterwards, what do you think it was? Why did we not play real well, especially the first half? And that's not to take anything away from Endicott.
Sure.
They're a fine team, and they really played well. But we were not very efficient on offense in that first half. We were impatient, taking some shots. We had some turnovers that we shouldn't have had. I'm not sure what it was, but fortunately, we were able to make the comeback. We started to get it going offensively in the second half. The thing that made it tough is Endicott had so much confidence. They had that lead, and they were just shooting the ball so well. It seemed like every time we started playing well and making shots, they would make even more shots. And, of course, as you know, it was still, I think, a double-digit deficit for us with about 5 minutes left.
That's what the amazing part is. You guys came rallying back really late in that game to force overtime, and then took control in overtime to win by 8. And certainly experience, usually they say, is the key here. But again, you have somewhat of an inexperienced team, a young team. They haven't had to come from behind in the NCAA tournament before. This team grew up quite a bit this opening weekend.
Well, yeah, our freshman players in the starting lineup were a big key in the victory. They have improved, but they're still young guys, and we face a veteran team in Oswego, junior and senior team. That's a concern for us. A lot of people say, well, Wooster's been, in the tournament so many times and advanced so many times, but we're the inexperienced team compared to Oswego this weekend.
Yeah, sectional appearance 10 times in the last 18 years. You've won 8 straight opening round games in the NCAA tournament. Certainly that would be the historical experience, but as you say, the team hasn't been around that long. Oswego State is the host, and that is who you play in the opening round. Besides, obviously, that they've got a number of juniors and seniors who have certainly found a way to win. What is it about them matchup-wise that concerns you? What is it about them matchup-wise that you think you can take advantage of?
Well, you start with Sortino, their outstanding guard, who averages over 20 points a game. He's a tough matchup at 6'3", a big guard, just really skilled, no doubt about it. And what makes it tough is you can't really help onto it too much because they have such good shooters around him. So yeah, that's the concern. Really, their experienced talent. But I don't know what we can take advantage of. We're just going to have to try and guard them the best we can.
It certainly makes some sense. While we're talking to you, you're on the bus, but what has the schedule been this week? You guys get out there a little bit early? Are you getting out there at about the right time? How did you approach this weekend?
Well, we had the long trip back from D.C. on Sunday, so our players were pretty tired, especially after the overtime game on Saturday. But we didn't do a lot on Monday. It was more of a mental day, just to get loosened up and shoot. We had 2 good practices, Tuesday and Wednesday. We left right after practice on Wednesday and traveled to Buffalo Wednesday evening, and we're on our way in from Buffalo now as we speak. And we're going to practice at Oswego this afternoon. So that's the plan. Hopefully we can get a good night's sleep tonight, get rested, and be ready to go tomorrow night.
How long's the trip? I meant to ask that.
Well, it's straight driving time. It's around 6.5 hours.
Okay.
Pretty much the same distance and traveling time as it was to D.C. last week. So
Gotcha.
We're kind of taking the same approach, going part way on Wednesday, finishing the trip up today on Thursday.
Tongue-in-cheek on this next question, Coach. Very much tongue-in-cheek. You guys are normally a preeminent top 25 squad. You guys have bounced in and out of that top 25 this year. Have you taken any hard times from your fan base?
Oh, not that I know of. Probably a lot of fans were disappointed through the season as we lost some games. But I know they didn't give up on us, and they were still coming out for the games, even traveling to the road games. And I think they realized that we were such a young team and that we were a work in progress. So, yeah, I know anytime we lose, the fans are disappointed, but they hung with us.
Well, they certainly have, and obviously I know they'll travel well to Oswego. There's plenty of room in the gym at Oswego. Not sure if there's plenty of room in the inn at Oswego, but we'll see how the fans do. Coach, appreciate you taking the time to join us here on the show and talk about your squad getting ready for the big sectional weekend. Obviously, we're rooting on for everybody to make the trip to Salem, and obviously love to see you guys back there, but there's a lot of teams who want to do it as well. As always, though, okay. Coach, we give you the final word. Any final thoughts you want to share with those tuning in?
Well, just thank you, Dave, for having us, and thank you for all you do for Division III basketball. You're much appreciated.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate the kind words. Good luck this weekend, and I know we'll talk to you soon at some point anyway.
Sounds good, Dave. Thank you.
Absolutely. Steve Moore from Wooster joining us again. They'll take on Oswego at Oswego coming up this weekend. The 7:30 game on Friday, 7:30 game. It seats a lot of people there. I'm not sure if that's a split double header or not on the but they can seat quite a few at Oswego. We'll see how that's all turning out. If you are heading to Oswego, you'll probably notice there's not a lot of hotels in the area. You may have to drive just a little bit to get into Oswego for a game. I know I ran into that looking at my plans for the weekend. But great little place to see. It's too bad I don't think any hockey's taking place. If it is taking place this weekend, it's a great place to watch some hockey as well. But basketball-wise, one of those great old-school gyms, seats quite a few people. Looking forward to some great basketball at Oswego. Thanks again to Steve Moore joining us on the show. Again, I don't know where I'm going next in the show. You better be following us on Twitter because we've announced it there, and of course it's on our show page, but check it out on Twitter at D3Hoopsville because we'll obviously post momentarily who the next guest is on tap. Want to thank City of Salem, as always, for being the sponsor of our hotline. Again, get your tickets today. Join us in the Roanoke Valley, even if your team's not coming to the Roanoke Valley. It is wonderful to see Division III basketball and the championships there. I ran into a guy last weekend who has been to 28, I think, or somewhere in the 20s, straight Final Fours. Obviously, Salem's now hosting its 20th. He says Salem does it the best. He's right. Join us there. We'd love to have him. We're going to take another break. When we come back, more Hoopsville. You listen to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. Back with more after that.
We've got more schools than Division I, more fans than Division II, and more upsets than March Madness. There's 800 programs with over 11,000 games leading to 2 national championships. And we've been covering it all for over a decade. From Eastern to Occidental, from Puget Sound to Piedmont, from Southwestern to the University of New England, and from Hope to Calvin. Nobody covers Division III basketball like we do. We're at D3Hoops.com at www.d3hoops.com.
College basketball lives in Kansas City at the College Basketball Experience at Sprint Center. The College Basketball Experience is the place to get your game on. It's not a museum, it's an experience you won't forget. Discover the history of the game in the National Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame, featuring the Gallery of Honor, Mentor Circle, and Honor Theater. Suit up in the latest CBE logoed Nike gear at the CBE Hoop Shop. Elevate your game today and visit the house that college basketball built.
For the love of the game. That's what it's all about, they say. But for those of us who are Division III student athletes, it's more than that.
It's more about team and the schools and communities we represent.
And for the many of us blessed with the strength to compete in sport at the college level, we understand that with what we were given comes a special obligation.
Our obligation to help those who have their own special needs and whose love for the game is no less intense.
That is why NCAA Division III teamed up with Special Olympics. Since August of 2011, we and others from Division III campus communities have volunteered more than 250,000 hours, time away from the classroom and practice field, reaching across the country to coach and mentor Special Olympics athletes.
And to learn that in giving, we receive so much more in return. Help us keep that dream alive.
Be part of it.
Get involved.
You can make a difference. For the love of the game. That's what it's all about, they say.
Oops, repeated the commercial again. Apologize. We're still figuring out some new quirks with an update to our software, and being by myself, I keep forgetting some things. Anyway, welcome back to Hoopsville. Hope you've enjoyed the show. I'm your host, Dave McHugh. Hoopsville presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. I want to thank again City of Salem, who's our sponsor of our hotline. Really appreciate their support. If you don't have a team going to Salem, and you still want to go see this, can get to Salem, I suggest it. Get in the car and drive if you have to. It's not that far from Southern Ohio. It's not that far from the Tennessee, Kentucky, and obviously those areas, and obviously Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and up into New England. It's not as far as you think it is, especially if you're willing to make the trip. Number of hotels in the area. Roanoke's a beautiful area. Salem does a tremendous job. Please go check out the championships, even if your team's not there. You might enjoy them more if your team's not there. Of course, women will be going to Capital, and I'm looking forward to seeing how that plays out as well. We're going to wrap up the show. If you got any questions for us, tweet us at D3Hoopsville and hashtag Hoopsville. Email us, hoopsville at D3Hoops.com. Join us on Facebook, Facebook.com/Hoopsville. Going to give you my take on what I think is what will happen this weekend and wrap things up as well. So don't be a stranger, as they say. And we'll try and answer any of your last-second questions. Programming notes. Again, Sunday we'll be back on the air at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. I am headed to Chicagoland. That wasn't the original plan. Originally, I was staying East Coast, was trying to figure out Oswego or Tufts. And just as I was about to pull the trigger, as they say, on those decisions, plans changed for my colleagues, and so Benedictine opened up. I am headed out there. I will be arriving and seeing the games on Friday and Saturday. There's an outside chance, I've done the math, that I could shoot out to Augustana on Saturday night to see that game instead of Benedictine and get back to the same hotel and fly out Sunday morning. It's a little on the insane side, so I may not go for it, but we will see. Also, it's going to depend on matchups, plain and simple, who wins what games and who's playing where. But anyway, I grew up in Chicago, so I'm also going to take a chance to go see my old city. But that's where I'm headed this weekend. Then Sunday, we'll be back in town. I'll fly back in time to do the show Sunday night. We'll do it from our Hoopsville studios. We'll hear from whoever I've interviewed out there. And in the meantime, we will then go, Thursday's show in Salem will not take place. The last number of years we've done a show in Salem, though we haven't been consistent with that show. The challenge is it's not a highly watched show, and I have a lot of responsibilities down there. Postponing the show to what now we do on Fridays and Saturdays makes more sense, frees me up. So what we're going to do is take what we were going to do on Thursday and put it into our Friday, Saturday efforts, our pregame show efforts at the Salem Civic Center. By the way, if you've been to the Salem Civic Center and seen our pregame site, ever since 2013 we've been doing it. We're moving locations this year, so don't be thrown off by that. Won't affect the production necessarily, but I thought I'd at least warn you. So that's, I think, some of those nuts and bolts. So again, we'll be back on the air here on this week on Sunday at 7, off the air Thursday, but on the air Friday before both sets of games on the men's side, and Saturday before the between the All-Star game and the championship game. And then Sunday we'll be back on the air wrapping things up, and mainly a pre-tape show that we do from Salem at 7 o'clock, but that's what we'll do from there. I think that's it. So let's talk about who's probably in and who I think can get to Capital and to Salem. We'll start on the women's side of things. We'll start in the upper left-hand corner because, well, why not? So it's all these games are at Thomas More. It'll be Carnegie Mellon and Washington U versus Thomas More and Maryville. You're crazy if you think I'm going anywhere but Thomas More here. Nothing against anybody else there. Thomas More will beat Maryville. The question is, can Carnegie Mellon beat Wash U? Carnegie Mellon, what I read, hasn't beaten them in like 43 games. I don't know if that's completely accurate. It seems wrong, but it's what I read Gordon made a comment about. Anyway, the question is who wins that. I'm going to take Nancy Fay because I think Nancy Fay is always ready for a match. If there's anybody who can beat Thomas More at this point, it may be Wash U just because of the experience. But Thomas More is coming out of here. Plain and simple. They're marching on to Capital. Lower left, it's Amherst Stevens and Bowdoin Rochester. Amherst versus Stevens, Bowdoin versus Rochester. Those games at Amherst. I think these are compelling matchups. Amherst, GP Gromacki versus Stevens, who's just kind of been flying a little low on the radar. I can't go against GP Gromacki and the formerly known as the Lord fill in the blanks at their own place. I don't know if Stevens has got the firepower to beat Amherst, so I'm going to go with Amherst. Bowdoin Rochester is fascinating to me. I looked at this matchup all week. I'm leaning towards Rochester because I think they've got the size inside, but you heard Coach Scheible talk about the matchup with Bowdoin. I'm not sure where this one ends up, but I'm going to lean towards Rochester, and I'm going to go with Amherst coming out of it. I think the home court is just too strong. They've only lost one game in like 10 years there. It's not exactly like that, but you understand my point. Upper right-hand corner, we talked about that, and I'll come back. We talked about that at the beginning of the season, or the beginning of the show. Crazy how this one's going to shake out. I think the right-hand side of the column is where, right side of the bracket, I should say, is where we're going to see possibly the two teams who the non-hosts come out. Scranton's undefeated will take on Christopher Newport, who's already proven with their win over Muhlenberg to be far tougher than people were giving them credit for. Albright, with their win over Montclair, will take on Tufts in a fascinating battle. As good as Albright's playing, I'm leaning towards Tufts because Tufts is just too good. That will possibly match them up with Tufts versus Scranton, and I've got Tufts coming out of here. At some point, I think experience plays a role. Scranton hasn't been this deep in the NCAA tournament in a very long time. I don't know if the Scranton home court is going to be strong enough for Tufts to be beaten down by, if that makes any sense. It's also an early game, 5 o'clock. I don't know why. Many games on the women's side have been earlier than normal. Needless to say, I've got Tufts coming out of there. I've had Tufts coming out of here. I'm going to stick with Tufts getting out of here. Lower right-hand corner, it's George Fox versus Texas Tyler, Wartburg versus St. Thomas at St. Thomas. The most compelling game, both of them are compelling, to be honest with you. Wartburg's a team that has been inconsistent, but has gotten some huge wins over top 25 teams this season, including what they did with St. Thomas in the gym around Christmas time. I think Wartburg is capable of beating St. Thomas, and I'm going to go for that upset in the early game, even though on my bracket, I believe I've got St. Thomas winning this one. At the upper top, George Fox, Texas Tyler. I'm going with Texas Tyler. This one's a bit of an unknowns game. George Fox, undefeated, probably not as good as that undefeated record indicates, and that's not a knock on them. They're still darn good. But even Coach Meeks has set it up before. They're playing with house money. They didn't expect to be in this situation this year. I'm going with Texas Tyler because as much as they're an unknown, I think they're dangerous. They shoot incredibly well. I don't know if George Fox can guard everybody, if that makes any sense. So it's going to be Wartburg versus Texas Tyler, and I'm going to go, why the heck not with Texas Tyler? This was the one bracket I've already gotten wrong. I had Oshkosh coming out of this bracket, so it doesn't matter to me. So I got Texas Tyler coming out of that. So my predictions out of this weekend are Thomas More Amherst, Tufts, and Texas Tyler. There you go. Why the heck not? Now let's go to the men's side and see how wrong I can make these predictions. Yes, tongue firmly in cheek. Benedictine, Ohio Wesleyan, St. Norbert, Alma. These games being played at Benedictine. This is the one I'm getting to go see. I get to knock off 3 teams from my list. I'm sorry, 2, because Alma's in there. I got to knock off Alma last week from my viewing list. Benedictine, Ohio Wesleyan, St. Norbert, Alma. I'm going to start with St. Norbert, Alma. This is a rematch of a game earlier in November, or in December, I should say. Alma controlled it, shot extremely well from outside, beat St. Norbert. I think it's a much closer game, and I'm going to ride the Alma wave at this point. They are playing such good basketball. They are so crisp in passing, so team-orientated. It's incredible. Nothing against St. Norbert. This game could honestly go either way. I think the previous matchup doesn't... Alma shot so well in that previous game that I don't think that was the difference in the score, not the difference in the teams. But I'm going to still go with Alma here. I think they're just that good. Benedictine, Ohio Wesleyan is fascinating. Can Benedictine keep this up? Ohio Wesleyan, well coached by Mike DeWitt. I'm going to go with the home team. I think Benedictine will end up pulling this off. I am not going to be surprised, though, if Ohio Wesleyan wins it. The trick is the teams I thought were capable of making the big run to Salem are out of this bracket already. North Central was one of those teams I thought could make a deep run. John Carroll, one of those teams who I thought might get past Alma and make a deep run. They're both out. So this one's wide open for me, as good as Benedictine is. And Benedictine versus Alma in the second game for a chance to go to Salem is incredible. And where's the pressure going to be on 2 very young squads? I'm going to go with Alma because I got nothing else. I'm looking for an upset, to be honest with you. I don't know if that's going to be true. I think Benedictine's got just as good a chance to get to the Final Four undefeated, which would be an incredible storyline in itself. And any of these 4 could get out of here. But I'm going to run with Alma. Why not? I got nothing to lose. Then we go down the lower left. These games being played at Tufts. It's Amherst versus Babson, Johnson Wales versus Tufts. I am not going to change what I said on Sunday night. It comes down to this. Is Flannery 100% for Babson? Because if he is, Babson comes out of this weekend. If he's not, I think Johnson and Wales comes out of this weekend. The reason being, as good as Tufts is, as high scoring as Tufts is, I think Johnson Wales is better at that game. Can Tufts slow down Johnson Wales? I don't think they're designed to. And as much as Tufts likes to score points, Johnson and Wales is designed to score points. Yeah, you could make an argument that Tufts is too, but not as much as Johnson and Wales. I think J&W pulls off the upset in the early round. Then Amherst versus Babson. If Flannery's back at 100%, as much as the double overtime game went in Amherst's favor, I think it goes in Babson's favor this time. The flip of that is if Flannery is not 100%, Amherst comes out of this, and then I don't know how Amherst handles Johnson and Wales. So that's where I'm going to lean towards. Flannery 100%, it's Babson. Flannery out, it's Johnson and Wales. Upper right, Rock Island, Illinois, at Augustana. It is Augustana versus Emory, St. Thomas versus Whitman. You'll remember in 2011, Augustana hosted this round, and St. Thomas was in this bracket. St. Thomas ended up winning a matchup between Augustana and St. Thomas in the Elite Eight to go to Salem. St. Thomas rode that to a national championship. I am taking a rematch in the Elite Eight of Augustana and St. Thomas, but I'm taking Augustana to come out right now. John Tower's probably listening, and he's probably ready to throw things at the TV. I have to go with Augustana. I have no choice but to go with Augustana. I have said since I walked out of the Salem Civic Center last year that Augustana would be back in Salem. I said it in the preseason. I said it midway through the season. I said it when I stuck with them as the number 1 team despite a loss. I have never had a different number 1 team on my top 25 this season than Augustana. I cannot now choose somebody else. That's it. That's the only reason. Augustana comes out of this in a rematch of 2011. Could anybody else win this? Could Emory pull off an upset? Sure, maybe. I don't think so. Sorry, Coach Zimmerman, but I don't think so. Can St. Thomas pull it off? Sure, they're a talented enough team. They've been in my top 5, top 10 for most of the season as well. But I'm going to go with Augustana because, again, I don't have a choice on this one. I've been voting for him like this the whole way. Lower right, at Oswego, this one's wide open. Christopher Newport versus Keene State, Oswego versus Wooster. I said on Sunday this could go to the benefit of Christopher Newport. Not distracted being at home, maybe a bit of a chip on their back, on their shoulder because they are not playing at their place. Not that it ever was feasible with the upsets. Keene State, terrific story. Don't have the firepower to beat Christopher Newport. You heard Ryan Kane at the beginning of the show talk about the fact that Christopher Newport has guys coming off the bench who are as good as the starters. There are guys coming off Christopher Newport's bench who'd be starting for 3/4, maybe 90% of Division III teams out there. And they're coming off of Christopher Newport's bench. Their center guy who's scoring a ton of points is a bench guy. I don't see how Keene State slows them down. Christopher Newport comes out of this. Then you've got Oswego versus Wooster. I'm going to go with Oswego. I'm changing my mind, I think, from Sunday. I don't remember exactly what I said on Sunday, but I know I was leaning towards Wooster. I think Oswego has got some talent, and their point guard at 6'3" is one of the reasons they're on fire, that gets them past what I consider an inconsistent Wooster squad. You heard Coach Moore allude to that as well. This is a team that had to come back against Endicott. I think it's going to be Christopher Newport versus Oswego, and then that is just matchup heaven. I would love to have gotten here. By the way, could not get a hotel room lined up, which is one of the reasons I'm going to Chicago. Christopher Newport versus Oswego is going to be fun to watch. I got to go with Christopher Newport because I said a few weeks ago I thought they could get to the Final Four. So I'm going to go with Christopher Newport for that one. But Coach Leon and Oswego could easily pull this one off. My only concern is I don't think they're as good inside as Christopher Newport is. I don't think anybody in this four is as deep as Christopher Newport is. And so I think Christopher Newport comes out of this. So again, a recap. Upper left, I'm going with Alma for no good reason. I'm looking for an upset, so I'm going with it. I think Benedictine falls short. Wouldn't be surprised if they come out of there undefeated. I'm just looking for an upset. The only reason. Lower left, if Flannery's 100%, Babson's into the Final Four. If not, I'm taking Johnson and Wales on a flyer. Upper right, it's Augustana because I've said it's been Augustana for nearly a year. It's going to be Augustana. I can't make myself choose somebody else. And Christopher Newport in the lower right. Those are my picks on the men's and women's side. Hope you've enjoyed the show. We certainly have had fun putting it on. Again, we'll be back on the air Sunday evening at 7 o'clock Eastern time. We will have interviews from Benedictine in some way, shape, or form. If we make a random fly out to Augustana as well, we'll have interviews from that. Most likely, Pat Coleman will have an interview for us. By the way, I see Alma, just a picture on Twitter came out of them getting ready at Benedictine. Can't wait to be at that gym. Lovely looking place. They are at practice as we speak. Congratulations to them on even getting this far. But anyway, Pat Coleman will probably have an interview coming out of St. Thomas. We'll see if we have other interviews from any of our other colleagues, but more importantly, we'll have other guests on the show looking ahead again at Salem and Capital. With that, we're going to end the show. I want to thank our guests who appeared on the show. From Keene State, Ryan Kane. From Rochester, Jim Scheible. From Texas, Tyler, Kendra Hassel. From Emory, Jason Zimmerman. From Amherst, Dave Hixon. And from Wooster, Steve Moore. Thank all their sports information directors as well for their incredible help in helping us get us on the air. Again, I'm on the road to Benedictine. If you see me, say hi. Apparently, I'll be doing color for the first game on Friday, joining our good friend, Mr. Calderwood. Sorry about that, buddy. Joining Mr. Calderwood on the call for that. Looking forward to that. And then just looking forward to enjoying the games on top of all that. Thank you to all tuning in. You have been listening to Hoopsville, presented by D3Hoops.com from the WBCA NABC studios. Thanks to our partners at the Women's Basketball Coaches Association and the National Association of Basketball Coaches for their support of the show. Thank you all of you who supported us on the Hoopsville fundraising campaign. Possibly on Sunday, we will go through our entire thank you list of those who donated to the cause this time around. And of course, thanks to the City of Salem as our hotline sponsor as well. That's going to do it for us. We will be back here on Sunday evening. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the show. Good night, everybody. And enjoy a great weekend of basketball. It promises to be a great weekend of basketball. Enjoy it coming up. Watch it online or get to a gym. It's worth the money. Enjoy.